Wilson.
This is 365 Sports.
Frazier adding more numbers, more yards to those. Big, oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break? Touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Ward takes the snap. Play action. Drops. Looks. Pops out of the pocket. Runs to his left. Throws it downfield. It is caught by Dunn. He's got the first down to the 40. Down to the 50. Down the sideline to the 40. Down to the 30. He separates. He's to the 20. To the 10. To the 5. Touchdown. Florida State. Warwick Dunn on third down. Unbelievable.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Burrow's got time, launching for the end zone, jump ball, touchdown, Terrence Marshall.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Touchdown for Russell, but only 14 of 29. He finds his number one target, number one, Corey Coleman, off to the races, touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on a Thursday afternoon. Hope you've had a really good day. I'm David Smoak, Craig Smoak to my right. This is 365 Sports. Paul was out this afternoon. He'll be back tomorrow. Right now, we have Andrew, Garrett, and Emery Winter running the mothership here on 365 Sports. We appreciate your time. We have guests today, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, John Talty from CBS Sports, Eric Galko, who runs the East-West Shrine Game on the Combine and NFL Draft. Craig's off the radar. Steve Urias, who's the athletic director at Tarleton State. They've got a historic moment the next couple of nights in basketball. Plus, remember, they've made that climb up the ladder in high school or college athletics. They're going all in when it comes to the revenue sharing. We'll talk with the AD about that. Scott Drew, Baylor men's basketball, joins us at 5:30. We will also break down the Boston College 2025 college football schedule. We've been through the Big 12. We'll now attack the ACC. Dan Lanning has a new contract. Not a surprise. He's been really good. He's been great. In fact, of course, last year, a very disappointing ending for them after the unbeaten season, beating Ohio State during the regular season, and then losing the opening playoff game to Ohio State after they had gotten their bye. His 6-year contract increases his annual pay by a couple of $1 million to $11 million annually, among, of course, the top 5 nationally when it comes to the investment to their head football coach at Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly deserving. He's done a great job in a short amount of time there. I don't know how often you're going to do this. I feel like Oregon's going to be pretty consistently a contender in the we can pay to play era, and we know they're backing and they're proud of that backing, and that's certainly been beneficial to them in the last couple of years where they've really made a huge push with the change to the Big Ten and then being in the playoff and just being as good as they've been with Dan Lanning so far. So, they've had their fair share of coaching, not catastrophes, but changes. We all remember the whole Willie Fritz situation. Took them a while to finally get a guy just in place to sit out there and build, and that's what Dan Lanning's been able to do. And they've had the rumors come around him as far as jobs, like when Alabama opened up, started to, is Oregon going to lose another coach again? And he basically, put the concrete down and said, no, I'm going to be here and I'm going to see this thing out. And so I think that's great for Oregon because there's a world of opportunities there to grow that place and to take it to a spot that it's never been before, which is at this point winning a national championship. I mean, that's the thing. They carry themselves like a team that's in that conversation of blue bloods or national champions. They have wins like they're in that conversation, but they don't actually have that trophy like the counterparts do. So that's the next big goal for him. But, not surprised to see him rewarded for the success they've had. And the coaching salary is now just clearing right across the $10 million mark consistently now, as we've seen these last few months, is just part of, I guess, this era as well, where that was not necessarily but maybe for one or two guys, and now you've got probably a handful of guys, I guess, that are around there. But he's deserving of it, and it's time for them to win a national championship. That's what will ultimately dictate his, whether he's the man or not, because they've had a lot of success. It's just not at the mountaintop yet.
I wonder if there are more coaches, Craig, making $10 million or more a year in the NFL or in college football.
I mean, I don't have any clue. I don't pay attention to NFL coaching salaries because they don't make a big deal out of them. College, everything's money. So we hear a lot more about it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to begin on who the highest paid highest paid NFL coach is. I can look it up, obviously. But I mean, I think they're probably somewhere in the same ballpark, the best of the best in either sport.
All right, Joey McGuire. And Texas Tech, of course, on the verge of opening up their spring workouts. We had Joey on Friday. This is a list of the players. And, of course, they knew these players were hurt or in rehab. But as he was answering questions about who's available for Texas Tech spring football, there's the list. Valdez, Banks, Lewis, Horn, on and on. Of course, down at the bottom, shoulder surgery. We knew about Baron Morton, their starting quarterback, among others. A long list of players who are out for spring football. Everybody has the bumps and bruises that will be coming back from different injuries, whether shoulder, knee, or otherwise. But that's a pretty lengthy list, including Lloyd Jones, another quarterback. But Joey McGuire with that official list that came out today as they're on the verge of starting their spring football.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the extent of some of these, what the rehab process looks like. But, I mean, it's typical to have guys out for spring. So, we kind of had an idea about Baron Morton, and Bryce Ramirez is obviously one of their better players that they were fortunate to get back. So, take care of him and Morton. And, the rest of the guys, just not a big deal. You're out for spring, in my opinion. Some of these guys maybe need the work. I don't know their roster back in like the back of my hand well enough to know about every individual, but obviously Cameron Valdez, a guy that is going to have to help pick up the slack with no Taj Brooks. So, that feels a little bit lengthy for any one team, but, nothing that I think you're freaking out about at the moment.
All right, so I saw this. This is actually per CBS Sports, but it's on an On3 graphic. The college quarterback power rankings as we are early in spring. In fact, not even in spring. But here are the list of the top 10, according to CBS Sports, quarterbacks as they enter 2025. A long way to go. Things can change. Heck, some of these guys, who knows where they'll end up, probably where they are now. But here's the list. And if you look, with Arch Manning at the top, Arch is getting a lot of love. He looks the part. When he's played, he's looked the part. He seems to be the part. Then Klubnik, who had a great end with the Clemson year. Then Beck now at Miami. Aller at Penn State. Sam Leavitt, Arizona State, great year for them, the Sun Devils. And then you have Nussmeier, who Baylor got a taste of in the bowl game. And then Sellers, South Carolina, one of the great stories last year. Sawyer Robertson at Baylor had a big year at number 8. Rocco Beck at Iowa State, heck of a year. And then DJ Lagway, who finally got the opportunity and is scaring the heck out of Paul and all the FSU fans. They need to worry about their own business, but DJ Lagway in at number 10.
Yeah, I mean, you ran down the entire list there. I guess Arch Manning at number 1 is not surprising, but I don't know, kind of feels a little goofy. I don't know how much we've really seen of him, but I understand that what we've seen is good enough for some people to declare him the best quarterback in all the land. I'm very intrigued by just seeing him actually be the starter and not the guy that comes in when Quinn Ewers is not sharp or when he's banged up. He looked really good in a lot of his time out there, but I do think it's going to be a bit of a different animal, and that's what I'm excited to see when people have full opportunities to game plan for him and when he's not just in particular situations, when he's got to play all 4 quarters. I'm very much looking forward to that because if he's as advertised and as we've seen so far, then he definitely deserves to be at the top of the list. But there's a lot of other good quarterbacks. I mean, Klubnik's a great story considering where he was about a year ago. And a lot of people soured on him or felt like he wasn't going to quite live up to the rankings potential that he had coming out of high school. But I think last year was a big step forward for him, and that's why you see him right there near the top. So, Good to see a Texas boy there at number 2. And right below a guy who's playing in his hometown, actually. But Carson Beck, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm really not, but he's a good quarterback. Aller's a guy we talk about a ton, and I feel like he's never quite I don't know. I think he's very talented, and I like him a lot, but I don't know that he's quite ascended to like the level of like superstar quarterback like maybe some of the other names on this list, but he can do that next year. Levitt's really good, and I think opened a lot of eyes. Nussmeier's got a lot of talent. Sellers has got an incredible amount of talent. So, yeah, I mean, these are all they seem about right. I mean, didn't really sit and chew on this and think about it too long to know who immediately pops to mind as far as an omission, but I think Sawyer Robertson deserves to be on there. I think people who haven't watched him, he's a very good quarterback. And then we know Rocco Becht at Iowa State and Lagway, a Texas guy as well, had a really nice debut there at Florida. So a lot of people excited about him, and that's a pretty stout group. I think there's a lot of players to get excited about heading into next year, guys who are going to be obviously going through their last tryouts before the NFL. You'd think Arch is in that group, but maybe not. But definitely guys like Klubnik and Beck and Aller and all of them, Nussmeier. But, yeah, Sellers is a hell of a talent, man. He really is. He's awesome, and this is going to be a fun group of quarterbacks to watch next year.
That's a nice chunk. I mean, that is a nice chunk. And we got to watch almost, not all of them a lot. We got to see a lot of them and more than others. Obviously, it's good to see that you have 3 players, quarterbacks in the Big 12. Of course, you have your SEC representation, 2 and 3. If it's okay for me to bring this up, they're both from the ACC. And then, of course, you have an SEC flavor with Manning, and then also with the Big Ten with Aller, Manning, Nussmeier, Sellers, and DJ Lagway from the SEC. Not the whole article. He's not a guest today, but I thought this was an interesting take from Dennis Dodd from CBS Sports. 2 things can be true about the ACC settlement. It's absolutely solidified the conference, and number 2, it also provided a blueprint on how college football is going to consolidate around that top 70 or 80 schools, pick your number, in what would be considered and has been talked about before as a super league. If you haven't read the article, it's pretty intriguing. It's not whether or not everything's calmed down or if all hell's breaking loose, but he put that out there. It's a good article. I read it earlier today from CBS and Dennis Dodd.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't read the article, but it's not ever the way that headlines appear to be all the time, where it is always everything's totally fine, or it's, oh my God, everything's falling apart. There is a middle ground, and that's where 99% of things actually happen. So it's good to know that he kept a level head with the article, because it's too soon to know one way or the other what that really was. I mean, we talked about it a bit yesterday, and I think we've all said basically what the reaction should be based on what we know, which is, yeah, it's not great long-term, but short-term it's great. That's the story. I mean, for the next 5 years, next 4 years, things will be okay as far as we know, and unless, Florida State decides to cut a massive check that they can just hold off on for a couple more years and cut like $100 million less of a check. So unless some team just can't help themselves and desperately needs to burn money to get out like a year early, these teams will be locked in for 5 years, and that gives the ACC a good amount of time, although not a ton of time, but a good amount of time to figure out how they can keep this together and also put together their options of, okay, well, let's say here's the exercise of how we all keep it together, and then here's the exercise of if Florida State decides they're going to announce that they're leaving the moment they can, and then so-and-so follows suit. Well, how do we react to that? What is our game plan? That's what the ACC needs to be doing right now, and so they've got time to do that. But as far as point number 2, so I think one's right, but short-term, not long-term. Long-term, we'll see. Number 2, I don't know that everybody will agree with that, because I think some people feel like it'll be less than 70 to 80 schools, and I don't believe 70 to 80 schools constitutes the naming of a super league. I think that's just a little bit less than what we have right now, but I just have a different definition of it. I can see that definitely being the case, but I tend to believe that 70 to 80 is far too large of a number, and that's the largest number I've seen when that has been referred to as the breakaways had the 80, but the Super League has been much lower than that. I mean, I think if he must be looking at it from the standpoint of Super Leagues, just all the teams that are remaining at whatever you consider that top level, and so there will be some pairing. But that's basically the Power 4 conferences all grouped together right there.
Yep.
And so that's what he feels like. I don't know what that means. I guess Boise would be back added to that, and that's how you come to the number of 80. I tend to believe it'll be more pared down than that if you're going to do real deal Super League. But I think his point is that if you do have 70 to 80 schools, the model of you win and that's how you get the money is what's going to be the standard across the board. So if it's a 25-team league, which they wouldn't have an odd number, but it's a 24-team league, or if it's an 80-team league, I think whatever that turns into, there's going to be some configuration where TV ratings brings money, so that automatically the big brands don't have to worry about winning all the time. But, hey, winning also brings money, so that will still make you want to win. But, yeah, I think what we saw with Florida State and Clemson getting more money based off a logo is probably what's going to be the next iteration as well, so that Texas and Ohio State and all of the same teams that have benefited from basically every decision this sport's ever made will continue to benefit, because that's consolidation, and that's what they're going for, is the biggest brands versus the biggest brands.
Well, by the way, teams getting more of the revenue is not different. It's happening even now before this decision on Monday, the settlement, because think about what SMU had to take nothing. In a way, there is revenue that they're getting from the ACC, but nothing. What Cal and Stanford are getting. And remember when the schools joined the Big 12, when they first added BYU and UCF and Cincinnati and Houston, they didn't get a full share right away. And the same thing even with Arizona, Utah, Arizona State, and who am I missing on that one? When they joined Colorado, when they joined the Big 12.
I think it's a bit different though, right? Like that's money that's not yours until you have a certain time period.
Because you have to earn your footing inside of a conference. But it's what the point what Dennis was making is that there are teams now getting less than a full share of revenue. It's not like it hasn't happened. This is different when you have to earn it. Everybody, let's say there's 64 teams. Every one of them is going to get a bunch of the money from the college football playoff and TV and all that. And then on top of that, they can earn other, I guess you could say, like hash marks. Okay, this is how much. It's not something that the Big 12, remember, when Texas and Oklahoma, Nebraska were the powers in the conference in many ways, there was always the discussion about should they have unequal revenue sharing. And it basically, in the end, split the thing apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before and it's not worked, like with the Big 12. I think I view that just a little bit differently, because SMU is ultimately going to get their money. They just got to wait a couple years and they'll have their share. This is like you're not getting a share ever. You're not getting this piece of the share ever. Your share is this. That's what it's going to be. You can make it greater if you win a bunch and get eyeballs on you, whereas with like SMU in your example, it's like you're going to get your money. It's just that you're on probation basically right now. So it's a little – regardless, it doesn't matter. The point of it is that – there's probably going to be that tilt of here's how you make more money, or here's how, the top schools stand to make more money. And I guess if you invest well enough, then you too can make that extra money as well. And that's what some people believe will separate has and have-nots, and maybe even push some to say, I'm out. I don't have the ability to be in this upper tier and pay the way everybody's paying. And that's how we'll create further separation. It's anybody's best guess at this point. But, I do think the TV rating money and the things like that the ACC set up will probably be used in a league like the Big Ten or the SEC, because, as we've said for a long time, why does Michigan feel the need to basically flood the pockets of Purdue? I mean, outside of like history and loyalty, and I know that goes to a certain extent, and maybe that will be the easy answer for some schools, but I think when you're going to start looking at the tilting, then if you invest more, you have more of the TV ratings. Ohio State can go get more. They're going to go out and try to get more if they possibly can, and not share it with, Washington if they don't have to.
All right, Bob Thompson, who has been on our show, and it all started back when Texas and Oklahoma left, the story came out that they were leaving for the SEC. We got to know guys like Jim Williams, Bob Thompson, and also, oh my God, I just went blank. Patrick Crakes. Sorry, Patrick. All three have been great in helping us understand the television network type negotiations. Bob, there were a few times when we had him on the show where he couldn't talk about the ACC or couldn't get into too much when it comes to the ACC. He could discuss some of the ways that the way things are structured, but he couldn't quite get into the ACC. And one of the reasons why he was a part of it in a consultant type way. FSU and ACC and Clemson, of course, a part of that too. They had their people, but Bob was kind of more than anything else. Maybe they were picking his brain during this time, and so that was pretty cool that one of our guests was that deep into it. And he said, listen, I had a very small role, very small part in the resolution, but it was good to see that he was a part of it. He has been someone we have leaned on for a long, long time. Now, the college basketball tournaments, of course, women's tournaments have begun in the March Madness. Here is Bracketology that is out, and this is where it is as of now. And still, the Big 12 with 8 teams. That's where they are. That's who they have. There are still 13 in the SEC, but that's the latest Bracketology from Joe Lunardi with teams that need to win. Some that need to win between now and the end of the weekend before the tournament is set. But there's the latest when it comes to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And from there to Evan Miyakawa, who's a guest on our show. He has all these analytics, data, graphs, all that. Here's what he has. If you are on the upper part of that line, there's the big long line from southwest to northeast. If you are above that line, if your logo is above that line, like the first one I see is Rutgers at the top. There's other logos there. You have underachieved based on what your criteria or who you are or what was your expectation. If you're below the line, that means your team has actually overachieved, which surprised me because one of those in the middle is Oklahoma, who has 5 conference wins. I think they play Texas this weekend. A&M, bottom left-hand corner, unexpectedly great season. Now, they went into a free fall, but then they just won the game against Auburn. And then you see a lot of other teams that are in the mix right now as among the top 10 teams, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, etc., that are among the best teams in the country. So there's a graph. You go to Evan Maya, M-I-Y-A, for more information, which teams have overachieved based on their roster talent compared to those who have underachieved. Baylor is on the top left corner, bottom corner, as underachieving, which makes sense. Along with, there's Kansas and a few other, Arizona, you see them right there in that same neighborhood. Now, one of the things is I see BYU above the line as preseason title contender flops. They were never a part of a preseason title contender. They've actually been one of the nice surprises. So there is how Evan breaks it down on his Twitter feed, Evan Maya on Twitter. And Utah, we mentioned this yesterday. It's official. Alex Jensen, who'd been a part of the Mavericks staff, is now the new head coach of Utah. The Utes with a quick change. It didn't take long from the time they made a change with a couple of weeks left in the regular season. Alex Jensen. So young at BYU was on an NBA staff. Alex Jensen with the Mavericks on an NBA staff. He now is the head coach, joins the Big 12 with Utah. Anything else?
Nope, I think that's it. Good for Utah.
When we come back, Sam Kahn, we have a lot to get to today. We appreciate your time today. Those of you already in the chat, we will be looking at you, people, and we'll have, of course, some comments from you as this show goes on. I'm David Smoak. This is Craig Smoak, 365 Sports.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
I'll never get used to this.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports, we'll have Sam Codd momentarily. He'll join us. By the way, I did get a text back from Joey McGuire. I did text him when I saw the list, and just to make sure, a couple of players are midterm freshmen who were already hurt that were being tweaked, and then, of course, a couple of the older players that needed to get some bumps and bruises healed during the spring so they could be available for the football season and also the fall. So nothing that's like, oh my goodness, these are 2 or 3 names that nobody knew about, as he's kept that pretty open with where they are. Remember, he's one of those that's in favor of listing players out during the week, where it used to be almost a taboo thing during anything college football. So there is an update. Joey sent me that text just a moment ago to update that list that we showed of players who are injured, had surgery, knees or shoulders, and also are now going through the rehab. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina's out today. He'll be back tomorrow. By the way, I mentioned now Bob Thompson, a former guest. I mentioned Evan Miyakawa, who's a guest. And Dan Wetzel, he joined us yesterday, was the first ever writer for Yahoo Sports. And they've been around a while, is joining ESPN as a senior writer, with various reporting, storytelling, multiple platforms he's a part of. He is, of course, been a part of this show. So congratulations to Dan Wetzel. I saw that this morning. I sent him a bulging eyes like, whoa. And then, of course, congratulations for his opportunity with ESPN.
Yeah, interesting timing since we just talked to him. Could have broken the news with us, but I get why they waited for the big press release. And I think that's a shame for people who enjoy his podcast with Ross Dellinger and Pat Forty, the College Football Inquirer over there on Yahoo. I guess this means the end of that, and I don't know what they'll do as far as trying to replace him on that show. I think that'll be a tough task because he's pretty much the driving force of that show. I mean, Ross and Pat are great, but Dan's the host, basically, and definitely has his own unique commentary and insight. So that'll definitely be affected, but I'm sure he'll have something pod-wise on the ESPN side of things. Be interested to see who he groups up with or how they go about doing that. Interested to see what Yahoo does in return, but sounds like for a guy very frustrated with college sports at the moment, based on his conversation with us, that he won't have to worry about it nearly as much. He'll, I'm sure, still be investigating, and that'll be a big part of it, but the college sports side of things. But this sounds very open-ended to be able to do, like he was doing at Yahoo, a lot of different stuff, and not just college football. So I hope he still jumps in from time to time. I expect that he will, but he's a great writer, and good for him on the opportunity.
All right, I got a question, and you guys can answer it in the chat room. We'll read it if you give it to us. There will be there will be college football games. We've gone over all 16 of the Big 12 schedules, games being played on a Friday occasionally, not a lot, but there is that. It's part of the get your football team and your conference on television, national television. What are your thoughts, Craig, about college football games being played on Friday nights? Is any one way or the other, do you care?
Any particular reason why you're asking this?
Yeah, because there's going to be more information that will come out tomorrow, yet more games that will be locked in on a Friday.
I don't love it. I don't hate it, though, either. I think if you are somebody that needs or wants to have a primetime stage and it's not available on Saturdays and Friday's your next best bet, and sometimes it's great to have a Friday game, to have that big game, to have that main national broadcast and get that attention. I think there were a couple of games last year that were on Friday nights that, I mean, unfortunately, I was booked up on Friday nights. I won't be this year, so I'm looking forward to being able to watch some more of those games, but I missed a lot of them. The couple I did get to catch were pretty entertaining from what I recall. Definitely makes for a unique atmosphere. Being on a different night, just something about it bumping up a day early gets people, I think, frothing at the mouth, and maybe knowing that you're the big game in town on that night just adds to it as well. But I don't mind them in moderation. I wouldn't want to see my team playing multiple ones a year. I wouldn't want to see you play one every single year. I'd want to play one like maybe once every couple years, and beyond that, I would try to avoid it just because I prefer Saturdays, but I think there's a place for them for multiple reasons. You just don't want to be that team that all of a sudden you're the new Maction and you're playing Tuesdays all the time now, all of a sudden. And for a league like the Big 12, who really, we saw a lot of that last year, I think that's what you have to do to get some of the real estate, get that platform, get that big network. And it's unfortunate you can't get more of that across the board on Saturdays, but it's the position you're in at the moment, and you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll be locked in on Fridays, and but I do think the Big 12 is going to release some dates. They have already released their schedule, but I think there's going to be some tweaking of that, and maybe even a few of the TV network-type games. And I do think that there will be a game or three games that right now are scheduled, we think, on a Saturday that will be moved to a Friday. That could come out as early as tomorrow. Sam Kahn joins us Thursdays, theathletic.com. Sam, thank you very much for your time. What are your thoughts? Games on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Tuesday, as long as you get the eyeballs and the money for the league, matter to you?
I think it's okay in moderation. I think where we get a little out of hand is when you have teams playing multiple weekday games in a row in succession. I seem to remember last year or the year before when Sam Houston moved into Conference USA, I think they had 5 midweek games in a row. It's like 3 Wednesdays and 2 Thursdays or something to that effect. And I think that can be a little challenging and disruptive for those schedules. And also, I don't, for some schools, I think it can be a boondoggle on attendance, because a weeknight is harder to get out for times, especially you got people getting off work and things like that. So it can hurt the attendance. But on the flip side, from a national exposure standpoint, it's going to be a lot easier for me to turn on a MAC game or a Conference USA game on a weeknight than it is going to be on a Saturday when they're going up against all the Power 4 conference schools. So I think there's good and bad. Certainly, as someone in the state of Texas, I don't love that we have a ton of Friday games in the state on the night when high school football is a big deal. But I also understand that TV money rules the roost, and so that's a little bit of a necessary evil at this point.
Sam, the big news this week obviously comes out of the ACC with the settlement regarding Florida State and Clemson and their lawsuits about the grant of rights. And we now know basically there's a 5-year clock that's ticking. It could be faster if Florida State decides they just want to pay way more money just to get out that much earlier. But basically right now, as we know it, there's a 5-year clock. And then after that, nobody really knows. But just what was your reaction to that getting settled and having a big question mark in terms of kind of the future answered? And now, how do you look at this moving forward? Did the ACC, do well for themselves here? Is this a big, massive win? Like, how do you judge what all you've seen in the reactions this week?
I think it's hard to make a grand proclamation about what the future may hold for the ACC, just because we've seen this before in the Big 12, right? There were concessions made for Texas and OU, and then there was a flirtation with expansion in 2016. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Texas and OU still left. And so no matter what you do to appease the schools now, it doesn't necessarily alleviate every concern that they have. I do think it alleviates some concerns, and providing some stability in the short term is good, because I don't think we need any more realignment, at least in the traditional sense. Of course, I'd prefer that we were back the way we were 15 years ago with the conference lines we had then. But I think it's good in the short term for the ACC. I think it's good in the short term for all those other teams that are not Clemson or FSU or maybe North Carolina, because it provides some stability, especially if you're Cal or Stanford or SMU who just got there. The last thing you need is the league being in upheaval. And so certainly this feels like it buys you a little bit of stability, but who knows how long, because you say 5 years. I seem to remember OU and Texas announcing their move 4 years before their grant of rights was up with the Big 12. So who's to say how fast this stuff moves? But it does seem to set up to where it lines up more with where some of the other rights contracts and other conferences are going to expire, or at least come up for negotiation. So I think if we see any other major changes, it's going to probably happen in the lead up to that 2030, 2031 type window.
Yeah, because Texas OU, that story by Brett Zerdeman was in July of 2021.
2021 summer.
So then so 3 years later, a little bit before 3 years later, they actually officially joined the SEC. So yeah, because you're not going to announce that you're leaving the week before the conference. The next you join a conference, there's got to be some sort of timeline there. You mentioned Stanford, Cal, and also SMU. I read a note from Billy Embody. He covers SMU, and he said, when I asked him, I said, "What's the mood there this afternoon on Monday?" And he goes, "It's a little. See, it's okay." He said, "The good news, it's still stability. There is still stability. It's not like this is going to be in 2 years, like you said." Then all of a sudden you're like, why did we do what we did, although it's been successful for SMU, no doubt?
Yeah, no doubt. And honestly, they're forfeiting rights money anyway. So it's not like
that's exactly
it's not like SMU is relying on the TV money at this point. SMU made the move to the ACC for access. And we saw that pay off in a big way because all of a sudden they got access to the college football playoff. And I think that is a massive success any way you slice it. You think about the program was on the trajectory up before then, but getting into the playoff and having that national exposure and having your program with that platform, you really can't put a number for how valuable that is for a program. I know we're only a couple years, maybe almost 3 years removed from TCU going to 2022. I know it seems like a long time ago because a lot has happened since then, but I still think that matters a lot for that program as well. Those moments in the sun, I think, matter for these programs. We still talk about Boise State in 2007 and their upset of Oklahoma. Those moments for those programs matters a lot. And so SMU really just needed the access more than anything. They could figure the money out because they've got enough money people and they've taken full advantage of it from an athletic department standpoint. So having the stability from the ACC standpoint for them is good. But I have a feeling that no matter what happens, they're going to try to figure out a way or find a way to stay in the group that is competing for national championships in the long term.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting because it's obvious the Texas schools don't want them. I mean, they've had their opportunity over and over again, and so it's like, just what would that even look like? But obviously there's a lot of things that we just don't know yet. Like, it's impossible to really predict anything because there's just so many uncertainties. But it does lead to wondering and speculation. I was just curious, Sam, because we've seen the Super League term pop up now again as a result of this, and that's not going to go away. What is your definition of a Super League?
I think it's probably a group of about 40 schools, maybe, that 30 to 40, depending on where you want to draw the line of demarcation, who have the most resources and the most success in their history and have the ability to, if not compete for a national championship, at least be in the conversation for it. So I'm not saying, I don't think it's all of the SEC and the Big Ten. I think it's probably your top 8-ish teams in the SEC, maybe. I guess maybe so top half of that league. And then probably, I don't know if it's 8 in the Big Ten, but there's a handful of programs in the Big Ten that would qualify as that too. So maybe it's less than 30. At least the way I view it is the way that they try to construct it in European soccer, which is I think they took either it was 12 or 16 European teams that they tried to put together. Of course, that thing got shouted down by the fans and never happened. But that's essentially what I think of a Super League as. I think the way that people are viewing it is essentially an SEC and Big Ten break off plus a few other brands like Clemson or FSU or whoever else fits that description. Either one I could see taking hold. I think the more likely outcome is the ones who generate the most revenue, especially when you see what the ACC did with the revenue share and how they're going to distribute that. At some point, you have to wonder if the Big Ten and the SEC schools, the ones that are at the top of the revenue food chain, are going to say, well, should we do something like that instead of distributing money equally to 16 SEC schools? Maybe Alabama and LSU and Texas and all these other programs that generate the most TV ratings, maybe they're going to try to do that. It's too early to say, but it's not a too far a logical leap to take at this point, is it?
No,
we've been talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
actually,
that's one of my points, is that even though these schools that are in those two conferences are protected, because they are, it's like there's a big fence around them, and they've allowed people in. But if they're already looking at the possibility of separating, they would not keep some of them from separating again. For example, Michigan does not want to feed Minnesota. You mentioned, obviously, Ohio State or whoever feeding Purdue, et cetera, whatever the examples are. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want to see that happen. But if it doesn't keep anybody from doing that again, and I don't know. So if it's 40, you're not going to leave 3 or 4 of the teams out of the ACC. The Big 12 hopes that they have whoever it might be connected to it. It's so intriguing to me of what that might look like.
I don't think it's hard to imagine, because we kind of have sort of seen it before. We haven't seen the Super League form, but we've seen teams get left behind. You remember the Pac-12 a couple of years ago, because Cal and Stanford got left behind, and Washington State and Oregon State got left behind by the teams that went to the Big 10 and the Big 12. We saw it in the Southwest Conference in the 90s. Texas A&M, Baylor, and Texas Tech left Houston, SMU, TCU, and Rice behind. So it's not unprecedented. Happen. It's just what does the end product look like, and would they go that far as to insulate themselves from the other brands of the conference? The only thing I could see stopping it at this point is the league leadership, because those are the guys, Petiti and Sankey, are the ones that hold the cards at this point. And I think are they willing to take that step and push that button? I don't get the sense yet that they are, but at what point do they relinquish that power? Or what point do the schools themselves say, screw it, we're going to do it anyway?
Yeah, you're right. When the Big 10, when the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference merged, they left people behind. There's the precedent there. They left them behind. They left Rice in Houston, TCU, and I'm forgetting somebody. They said, sorry, it's politics involved, money involved, value involved, but they did. They left them behind. I forgot about that. Arkansas had left, so they didn't have to worry about that part because they were already a part of the SEC. So it has happened before. Do you like that idea? Is that enough? Are those enough teams that really, truly have a true national champion in college football at the highest level?
I think with Buddy Elliott, who works at 247 CBS, who does Cover 3 podcasts, they do a really good job. I think he puts the number at around 18. I think in terms of teams that actually win it, that's probably about right. But of teams that you could say you could put in the conversation at any given point, in terms of, okay, here are teams that could win a few games in a playoff, and maybe they can play their way, and that's where you start including the TCUs of the world. Maybe that number is somewhere between 30 and 40. And so here's the other thing, and I'll go back to what I just said earlier too. The other entity that could stop something like this is the TV networks, because at what point do they realize that chopping off such a large portion of the college football fan base, is it worth it? Because sure, a Super League in theory is interesting to talk about when you talk about all those matchups, but you're chopping off the fans of Vanderbilt and the fans of Illinois and all the Big 12 fans and all the ACC fans that are not fans of teams named FSU and Clemson and North Carolina. So that's not when you add they may not be individually big fan bases on their own, but you add all those schools up, that's a pretty large chunk. So that's the other part that is fascinating about this is, what is TV's appetite for it? Or do they have an appetite to make the league or make college football that exclusive to where it's only a handful of programs competing for national championships in an official way, where there's actually no access path for everyone else? I sure hope we don't get there, because I don't like any of that. I don't even like that we're trying to expand it at this point with guaranteed bids for more for one conference than the other. I think that's silly on its face. But you do that's the other entity that has the power in this, and you have to wonder, are they going to do the math long term on that? Because the more you shut out these fan bases, the more casual fans I think turn away, because you will have some casual fans who will turn in to see the best of the best. But this is not like, I think this is different from European soccer. College football is probably the most similar entity to European soccer that any American sport is. But these are still schools, and they're still entities that fans have a personal connection to, that they still They went there, they studied there, they had some of their formative years and most memorable years of their lives there. That attachment still matters. And the closer you get to a super league where you only have 30 or 40 schools competing for something, the closer you get to removing that part of it. And if you remove that emotional attachment and you remove hope from the equation, then I think you're walking down a really dangerous path.
Sam, I've been around a long time, and so it's easy to sometimes get jaded or just used to stuff, but also just things change. I remember how big of a deal spring football was when I first started covering college football, or how exciting at least it was. Now, granted, there was no transfer portal, there was no NIL, there was none of that going on, so you kind of knew you were watching the team that you were going to be watching, and so you could build it up, right? That's all gone. And so I think I've taken a little bit of a hit in terms of just my spring enjoyment because – I don't know if the team I'm watching is going to be that team in like 5 months from now, but where's your level of spring enjoyment at this point in your career and just knowing sort of the way the Matt rules have talked about it now of the lack of spring games and all that's come with that these days?
It's definitely toned down for the actual practice and the spring game. That stuff, I'll still watch it. It's not as exciting and interesting because, like you said, 10% of the roster or 15% of the roster may change come April 16th. So you don't know if that's the full team. And also, when you get to spring games now, coaches are so paranoid, they make everything so vanilla. So it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions from it. I still enjoy spring as a chance to really deep dive into teams. And you guys have been doing it lately with your going through every team schedule for 15 minutes in the Big 12. This is a chance to, and I use it as a reporter to go visit schools, go talk to coaches. And there's no game on Saturday, so you don't have that looming deadline. You're not in a rush. There's time for coaches and players to sit and visit, and you can really dive deep into some of their stories and learn a little bit more about the program or where they're headed and fixate on the direction and trajectory of these programs. So I still like it for that part. I still love the off season, and the off season is more interesting, I think, than ever because of the portal. But as far as spring football itself, some of the value of it, I think, has gone away just because the roster still changes. And I think until we get to a point where you are practicing with your entire roster, then I think there's always going to be a ceiling on how valuable it is. It's more, hey, let's get to where we have our entire team with us. Then you can start to draw some conclusions and I think make some real proclamations about what you have.
Joey McGuire last week said that he still likes the old way of going about spring. Of course, he has a lot of players, we mentioned that earlier, but a lot of teams do. And then Phil Snow joined us yesterday, who's now with Matt Rule back at Nebraska, and he said that he thinks the spring drills more important for the younger players. That if you have a guy that's a third-year player or a redshirt, whatever, but he thinks that would hurt the development of the younger players, either freshmen or those who didn't play, and that, he thinks, is what's good about spring football.
Yeah, and I do think we're getting closer to a point where we're going to have to figure out that one size does not fit all for everybody because every team is different. Like you said, teams that have a lot of returnees, they're in one boat. Teams that have a lot of newcomers are in a different boat. I do think there is some credence to, you don't necessarily have to replicate the NFL model, but I think there are some points you can take from it. For instance, the NFL has a rookie minicamp. What's to stop a college football program from having a freshman version of that or newcomers where you have, okay, we're going to set aside these couple of weeks for our freshmen and our transfers, and then we're going to bring the returnees this next week and then do them for a few weeks and so on and so forth. I think the spring schedule probably requires some creativity at this point. I don't, and especially too, because you're going to have some teams who finish their season in November because they didn't make a bowl game, or they finished their season in December because they made a early bowl game. And you're going to have other teams who played into late January. And so the calendar doesn't necessarily work for everybody, and the format's not going to necessarily work for everybody because you have 136 teams now in the FBS this year. Not every one of them is going to be able to fit around the same thing. It's not like high school football where you can say, okay, everybody reports on this date, and if you had spring, you'd report on this date. It's a little different in college. And so I think you have to adapt to that and work for real world solutions that fit what we're dealing with now, as opposed to trying to retrofit the teams to the old philosophy.
We had a list earlier, Sam Comm with theathletic.com about the quarterback CBS Sports rated the top 10. It's a hell of a list. I mean, there's some dudes now that are 4, 5, 6, whatever. Arch Manning has all the tools. We've seen it. We've seen glimpses of it. And we also saw that game earlier when Quinn Ewers didn't play where he was phenomenal and won even some weekly awards, that honors that week. He's going to have weapons because Texas is loaded. Sarkisian's a great play caller. Is he as good as you, from the glimpses you've seen? Do you feel like that carries over and he is a part of all these high-level awards and he's going to be that good his first year as a starter?
I mean, who's to say? It's hard to say. I do think he's going to be really good. I don't know that I'm ready to say he's going to be the best quarterback in the country. I do think it's fair to say he could be a top 10 quarterback in the country next year. The physical tools are substantial, and his ability to drive the ball, the velocity, the deep ball accuracy, and then his athletic ability. And that's where it's going to fall on Steve Sarkisian, and I'm really curious. Sark has never been a guy who runs the quarterback. He's always been a drop back passer, play action pass heavy system guy. With Arch, I think it behooves you to use his legs a little bit, whether it's in the read option or whether it's RPOs and trying to get him moving that way. I think it's going to be really critical for them to use that part of it to make defenses account for that part of his game. And that will open it up, because if defenses are worried about you running the ball, all of a sudden the middle of the field opens up, because you're going to have a linebacker trying to account for that. And then all of a sudden you can sneak a receiver back there or a tight end back there. And then all of a sudden you've got open guys to work with. So I think his ability is really good. Everything that you hear about in terms of his preparation and how he approaches it, he seems to approach it like a pro. Obviously, he's got the pedigree. I think he's going to be really good. I don't think he's going to be perfect, because he's only started 2 games and he has made some mistakes. When I saw him against Louisiana Monroe in his first start last year, you could tell there were some times where he tried to force it in there. And I think that confidence at times may work against him, that he's going to try to force some balls in because he's confident in his ability to get the ball there. And so those are things you're going to have to work. There's just going to be some things that he's going to see that he hasn't had to see very much. And you only will see as a full-time starter. And that's one of the reasons why Quinn Ewers came back. Was he said that when they did the research that NFL quarterbacks that go on to the NFL have better chances of success when they started 25 games or more at the college level. We're talking about Arch has had 2. And so that's a big gap in experience. So some things you're only going to learn by actually doing, but I do think his physical skill set, his mental preparation, his pedigree, the coach he has calling the plays, he's got the same offensive coordinator, play caller, and quarterbacks coach for his entire career. All those are advantages for him. Plus, you mentioned all the things he has to work around him. All those work in his favor. The one thing I would say is a little bit of a question mark for me is the offensive line. They do bring some guys who have starting experience, but they're losing a ton of guys. They're losing Jake Majors. They're losing Kelvin Banks. They're losing Cam Williams. So they're Hayden Connor. So they're losing a lot of guys off that line, and that's gonna take time. I don't think they're gonna be an elite line right away. They're gonna have to work themselves into that. And so how does Arch handle pressure? How does he handle when guys are coming off the edge, breathing down his throat, and he's getting hit multiple times a game? We haven't had to see a ton of that. We've seen him a little bit, but I like to see how he handles that. But I do think he's going to be a really good quarterback, and it won't stun me in the least if he's a top 10 quarterback in the country.
Would it surprise you at all if he stays the next couple of years? Because, so many people want to force him into the NFL. I think wishful thinking, if anything. But I feel like he's probably going to start a couple of years at Texas, because he doesn't seem like he's in any rush, nor does he necessarily have to get to the league to support mom and dad or anything like that either, right? So, yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all, Sam, if we see him play a couple of years as a starter.
No, not at all. I mean, he's done everything else differently in his career. He did his recruitment differently. He's done his early college career differently, and he's been patient on that front. And so it would actually be on brand if he stayed for 2 years and waited until going to the NFL. And that 2 years, if you assume that Texas goes and plays a couple playoff games each time, that puts him pretty close to that 25 start mark that I was talking about. So that probably sets him up for success a little bit more in the NFL. And honestly, no matter how good he is, I think there's a value to that. There's a value to doing it over and over again at the college level for a little bit and then trying to move on at that point. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if he stays into the 2026 season And I think Texas obviously is hoping for that as well.
I'll never forget what Bill Parcells said about drafting a quarterback. He wanted a quarterback that had at least 30 starts and had won 23 of those 30 games. And I think there might have even been like a snap count, like a certain amount of snap. Now, that would be harder to do now in this day and age of college football with players getting out quicker. Like they still have to play a certain amount of years, but 30 starts was his key, 23 wins, and back then he did not want underclassmen. I would think that particular philosophy for him might change. But that goes to what you said about Arch and what he might. I tell you what, thank you, Sam. Appreciate your time and being on with us as long as you were. When I first saw Arch Manning, the arm and all that, when I first saw him at the college level, his ability and his size and his ability to run, and he wasn't uncoordinated. He's really an athlete, very good athlete, and that to me is extra special with what he brings to the table. Quinn Ewers could take off occasionally, pick up important first downs, but Arch does seem to have that without question. John Talty, CBS Sports, is our next guest. David Smoak, Craig Smoak, this is 365 Sports. Thank you very much today for your time, and we'll continue in a moment. Baylor alumni. Fan engagement. Baylor alumni from Baylor University. They'll be in Kansas City. The women start playing tomorrow, and the men will be there, of course, next week. And I guarantee you, at the Team Hotel in Kansas City, Baylor alumni fan engagement will be very much noticeable. They will have different things they set up if you're a Baylor fan that goes on the road in Kansas City, or with wherever the men and women end up traveling during the NCAA tournament, whether it's in the first round, if they get to the second weekend or not. They will set up the team hotel. They'll have like events throughout the day. They'll have watch parties around the country if you cannot get to where you want to be. They'll help you set one up if fans and alums, donors in your particular market. It might be Chicago, for example. They will also have send-off gatherings before the team leaves the team hotel, and then they'll have other goodies there, ways for you to sign up for different events and be a part of the Baylor alumni fan engagement. Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe are the ones that usually run all of that. You can find them. Go to their Facebook page at Baylor University Fan Engagement.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
And
Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
365 Sports, and what we try to do a lot of different times based on stories or discussion, events, etc., is look at different opinions on to give you different opinions. Let you form your own. We have ours. Sometimes they can be changed, swayed, whatever, but also hear from others, including John Talty, national college sports writer, reporter for CBS Sports and 247 Sports. And John joins us on 365 Sports. Hello, what cap is that? What do you have on? I can't tell.
Got some Real Madrid here. A little Champions League, you know.
Yeah,
that time of year.
There you go. Well, that's interesting. You bring that up because we just had Sam Kahn on from theathletic.com, and he was talking about college football, the future. You wrote an article about it based on the settlement Monday. Can you ever see college football, now that you have that hat on, as having any kind of what is the word that I'm trying to use that they use when it comes to soccer? You're either good or you're
relegation.
not. Relegation. Could you ever see that? They have time for that?
I mean, personally, I would love it. I think it would be fascinating to watch. It's interesting. I had a book that came out in August called The Price. And within that book, I talked to former NCAA president Mark Emmert, and he himself was saying, I think this ends in a relegation system, which was kind of fascinating to me to hear the former NCAA president say that, in part because he oversaw a system that moves glacially slow in terms of any sort of innovation or evolution. So it was interesting to hear that from him on the other side of it. But can you just imagine, a game in late November between Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, where one of them is staying in the Premier League and one of them is dropping down? Now, if you're a school, you probably don't want that because it leads to risk and there's all these other kind of complications that come with it. But from a pure viewer standpoint, if we were to get into kind of a super league concept, which has been bandied about for years now, where 40 to 50 of the top teams are all in one division, if you had teams kind of coming in and out of that, I think it'd be, must-see TV at the end of the year, knowing whether your team's going to be in or out or have to drop down a level. Again, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I would be fascinated to watch it.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be interesting. It would juice things up a little bit. My question would just be like the thing I've always wondered is just how a program could deal with that year to year. Like, how do you recruit to being relegated and then say, no, really, we'll be back in there in like 2 years. Just, you got to trust us. That's where I find it would be kind of hard. But it is very interesting. And John, I know we're going to get into a lot of different parts of what's happened this week with the ACC settlement with Florida State and also Clemson. But just what was your initial reaction to this? Were you surprised that they have now come to some sort of a conclusion? And when you learned of the details of what we do know at this point, what was your reaction to how they came to this agreement?
Yeah, I think a year ago I would have been shocked. I can remember being at ACC spring meetings in May of last year, and this thing just hung over the entire conference. And again, you talk to whether it was Florida State people, Clemson people, people of other conferences, the expectation was that they were going to leave. That was what we all thought was going to happen. They were not hiding that fact. And so from that point to here, definitely surprised. I think within the last 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, it's been trending toward this way where both sides have indicated potential willingness to come to some sort of mutually beneficial agreement where Florida State and Clemson get something out of it and the ACC gets security and stability. I do think what's interesting is that, go back 2 years ago, Florida State had a similar idea to what they ended up doing, where you're changing the revenue based on, television ratings and based on, success and things like that. And they were shut down. They were told, take your idea somewhere else. and they had to sue to essentially get what they ultimately got. And so, it was a lot of billable hours. I think the lawyers are undefeated in these kind of situations, but ultimately, I think that it's a win for both sides, at least in the short term. Ultimately, what happens, I think, is going to be something that will continue to hang over the ACC. Whether these two teams are ultimately going to be in that conference long term, I think is an open question right now. But just from let's keep this thing together for at least a few more years, I definitely think that accomplished that. And I think there's, for Jim Phillips, there's something to kind of hang your hat on, knowing that a year or so ago, everyone was saying that Florida State and Clemson were gone.
Did Florida State and Clemson get even more than they expected when this all started?
I think it's probably in a similar ballpark. I do think that they got certainly some wins. I think maybe the thing that I think surprises some people is just that number to ultimately leave in the 2030 range, dropping down to 75 million, I think was a pretty big win for them. I think some of the numbers we saw early on in this process were considerably higher than that. And for them to also be able to leave with their granted rights, I think is a big win for them. So, again, I think like in any sort of deal, you're not going to get everything you wanted. There are probably some things, would love to leave with no fee, right? Or, get all that. The ACC, would love to have kept that fee higher, but you got to find a middle ground. And I think ultimately that was one where I think you kind of give the advantage to Florida State Clemson there, should they want to leave, that number is pretty reasonable, all things considered. I mean, 75 million is a tremendous amount of money, but with all the money that's in college sports right now, that is doable. Certainly you could get a loan or private equity if you needed to float you that number to get you out.
So, John, one of the things that you talk about, and I think everybody's kind of wondering, is does this spread the revenue sharing to other leagues now at this point? Is this something that the SEC takes a look at? Is this something the Big Ten takes a look at? Is it something, do you feel like that's going to be now more commonplace and other leagues will go, that's how we're going to operate as well? Or is that even feasible for all of these other leagues?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's two things to that. One, it's already happening a little bit. It's all of these different conferences, not all of them, excuse me, Big Ten in particular, is doing some of these unequal shares right now. And that's based on newer schools coming in. Oregon and Washington, for instance, are getting less than a full share. I'm pretty sure Maryland and Rutgers still have not gotten a full share from joining the Big Ten about a decade ago. So they have a kind of a little bit different than others. SEC, Texas and Oklahoma came in at a full share. So a little bit different there. So we're seeing it a little bit already happening in the Big Ten. But, big picture wise, could we see something similar to what's happening in the ACC? I definitely think it's possible. I think that's where people feel like it's ultimately going to end up. I think the thing that you have to remember with it is that it's not like the ACC necessarily wanted to do this, right? Like they were sued in multiple different courts, and this was the end conclusion to that. So is there a school in the SEC or Big Ten that's willing to take it to that level? What leverage are they going to be able to create within their conference to demand and or get more money? In this situation, a school like Wake Forest, NC State, whatever it might be, it is worthwhile to them to likely give up some money in order to keep a spot and keep the conference together. Is there something that compels a Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, a Maryland, a Nebraska, whatever it might be? Nebraska's maybe not a good example, but you guys know what I mean. Yeah. To give up a percentage of possible revenue, that's going to be the interesting part of it. I do think that one possible avenue to that is, I mentioned it earlier, if there is a possible Super League concept that gains steam, that could be a way for an Alabama and say a Texas to say, hey, either we're going to break off and just join this other thing and get way more money, or if you want to keep this thing together, we'll get a bigger cut of the pie. Things are great in the SEC and Big Ten right now. Everybody's seemingly happy. They're all making a lot of money, but people always want more. And so I think it's a pretty easy jumping off point to say, hey, we saw it happen in the Pac-12 in the past. We're seeing it happen in the ACC. It's reasonable to assume eventually it'll start hitting other conferences. And, I think that's not maybe in the too distant future where that could start happening.
I'm going to use the SEC as an example because you live in Birmingham, right? Isn't that where you are? And you've covered, the book behind you was Saban, and you've covered the SEC. And everybody seems to be in the same neighborhood, like a gated community. Whether you're Vanderbilt or South Carolina, who obviously is making a little bit of a surge with Beamer and Sellers and whoever, but they're all in the same neighborhood. And do you think that those who have protected them in the past, when it's all one, and when you SEC, that they would ever leave those guys behind?
If the money gets big enough, right?
Yeah.
I think that the SEC has done a great job of promoting congeniality within the conference. I think Mike Slive deserves a lot of credit for when he came in, because at the time, there was all kinds of infighting. They were turning each other into the NCAA and all these kind of things. And I think with Slive and Sankey has continued this, like, let's keep it in the family. Let's build for the greater good. There are going to be arguments. There's going to be people upset at each other, but let's build this overall big SEC brand, which is, over the last 20 plus years has taken off as football has exploded. Could that be broken up over time? I think it's possible. I think that there could be a time, especially if it happens elsewhere. Let me again circle back here. Why did Florida State and Clemson want this? Why is ACC willing to do this? Because the Big Ten and SEC's revenue numbers are exploding, and they were falling behind, and they had to do something to try to close that gap, keep them happy. Well, let's say the Big Ten does this, and all of a sudden, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are getting bigger cuts of the pie than some of the smaller Big Ten schools. That is, I could see a scenario where the SEC starts feeling that pressure. Well, look, Ohio State's now making $30 million more a year than we are. Like, we need to close that gap. Why are we getting the same amount as Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or these other smaller schools? So there could be some different things that I think could push them into action. I think if you're Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, you don't want to end up like that. You'd love to just try to keep it even. It's less headaches for you overall. But I could see some market factors ultimately forcing them into having to do something to keep the big dogs happy, knowing that there is quantifiable ways to show that a school like Alabama delivers considerable more value to the conference, especially in a television rights standpoint, than a school like Vanderbilt. Like, we can prove that pretty easily. And it just depends on, at some point, whether Alabama wants to start throwing their weight around to that way and what they're willing to do to accomplish part of, getting more money.
Yeah, because it's not that they haven't had years where the conference has been deep, but also they've had top heavy, because teams that have, like, for example, what Saban did, that's once in a lifetime type stuff at Alabama, what Kirby Smart's hoping to accomplish. But when they added two teams, it wasn't like it was just a couple of random schools. We're talking Texas and Oklahoma, who themselves don't think that they stink, that they don't, that, and that's again, traditionally, no matter when they've had ups and downs or whatever, that to me, football's on the, this is my opinion, John, football's on the edge of like breaking off, or in some ways, if that ever happens where teams within those two high-level conferences turn on each other, then God knows what will happen.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that people think is possible. Where ultimately this is break off and just become kind of its own operation. Within the overall scheme of things. I think we're seeing, not to make it about other things, but we're seeing right now, for instance, in basketball, all these Big Ten coaches complaining about the travel now. The Los Angeles area schools in particular. They're constantly complaining about it. Well, those decisions were all made based on football, right? Football has driven every realignment decision for years now. And so in an ideal world, if it breaks off, maybe you can reformat the other ones where it makes more geographic sense, where UCLA doesn't have to fly to Rutgers to play a basketball game on a Tuesday. That is maybe one of the benefits that could come from it. But I think that there's a lot of money circling football right now. We've all seen the reports, talked to different people involved in these different projects that have a lot of money behind them that are interested. And the big thing that you hear from those people is that they feel like there is a lot of money being left on the table. And the reason why is because it's not bundled up the way MLB or NBA or NFL is. You've got all these little fiefdoms that are doing all their different deals. If they were all packaged in one super league type concept, people think it's worth billions of dollars more from a television rights standpoint. So I think there's a way of enticing at some point some of these schools to think more about it, where we can offer you a lot more money, more power, whatever it might be. Of course, that would require a lot of moves, a lot of complications and all those different things. But I think the key to remember in this general discussion is that things are changing rapidly. We've seen a lot of change just in the last 5 years. I think it's, it'd be smart to think that 5 years from now, there's probably going to be a lot more change, especially as we get to that 2030 range where a lot of these television right deals start coming up and where people think things are really going to crank up again.
Do you see any of the 131 schools, or whatever the number is now in the FBS? John Talty with us from CBS Sports. Do you see where some of them eventually have to tap out in the next 2 to 5 years because of the revenue sharing and all in 20 million, whatever that number eventually becomes year after year?
It's a great question. So, you mentioned it earlier. I'm in Birmingham, and so I was here and covered quite a bit of when UAB got rid of their football program, and I saw the impact on the community. It led to uprising, might not be the right word, but people were extremely upset. And as you guys know, ultimately they brought the football program back, and there was a lot that went into that. But I've seen it firsthand. I've seen how much pain and sorrow getting rid of a football program can be. I also saw firsthand how deeply unpopular it was for that president to make that decision. So it's a risky move. We've seen it happen in the past. Could I see someone deciding ultimately that this financial equation does not make sense for us anymore? It's possible, but I also know that it could, cause problems. And generally speaking, I think university presidents try to do things to limit problems, limit issues for them. So I think they'd really have to be pushed to the brink to do that. I do think, though, within that general idea, I wonder if we see more schools start to prioritize where they devote their money. So if you, for instance, let's scale back in football, let's put more money in basketball, especially from a rev share standpoint, where we think we have a better shot. I can use Baylor, for example. Baylor's been very good at both at different stretches. At some point, you decide, all right, basketball is really cooking right now. Let's take $1 million off of football and put it toward basketball or whatever it might be. I think you're going to see schools really have to wrestle with those equation decisions in terms of where you put your resources, knowing what gives you the best shot to succeed and what your fan base cares most about and all those other different things. So I certainly could see schools pull back a bit from a resource standpoint on football to prioritize basketball, baseball, other different sports, whatever they might be best at.
One question, if you don't mind, can I have one more with you?
Yeah.
So if there is this breakaway, whatever this number is, and we've heard anywhere from 32 to maybe 60 or so, do you think, and if there is, there's no way that a Florida State or Clemson or Miami would be left behind. There's too much there, and that remains to be seen. But if there is, can you see a national championship in college football being decided without those specific teams being involved in it?
Yeah, it'd be hard. I don't think that's good for the sport. I think that you look back to, why in some ways the playoff expanded. And one of the things that I remember hearing Greg Sankey used to make this point a lot, we're losing the West Coast. We're not getting West Coast teams involved. And that's dangerous for our sport. If we're only a Southern-based sport or only a Northern-based sport, we need the full country involved, like the way it is for the NFL and other professional sports. So I think if you were to not have premier schools with big fan bases even have a shot to be in the national championship, I think that's dangerous for the sport. And I think that you don't want to end up like a NASCAR or something else where it's very regional and it does not have national appeal. I think you need to have all these different big pockets. You need to have Texas, you need to have California, you need to have Florida, New York, other different places. And so how you come up with that number, if it ends up happening, will be interesting. I think that will be very complicated. But, with the way that those schools have been successful in the past, with the way that they've invested heavily, Florida State, Miami, they're trying to win. They're putting real money into it. I feel like they have to be a part of any sort of super league that might be just because of their success. And also I think the value they would potentially bring to that league itself.
By the way, for those who have not read the book or don't have the book, get the book. The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos, Armand and also John Talty, the authors of those books. Thank you for your time, my friend. Appreciate it. Thank you. John Talty with us from CBS Sports and also an author of that Nick Saban book, but also The Price. It's hardback. I'm sure it's got the other cover too, but it's a good look. It's a good book about digging into a lot of stories that maybe you haven't heard before. When we come back, Eric Galko joined us back earlier in the year. He's the one that runs and sets up the East-West Shrine Bowl, the college football all-star game. He also, when we first got to know Eric, was an NFL draft analyst for OptimumScouting.com. He's next. This is 365 Sports. And I'm in that mode right now where I don't have it taped down by Emery, so I got it. Don Shumador Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco. 48-foot walk-in humidor. If you smoke cigars, they have what you want. They do. Rocky Patel, Padron, Cohiba, Romeo and Julieta. If you want the best brands, world's ranked cigars, they have them inside their 48-foot walk-in humidor, and they have some that maybe it's just what you like to smoke. Like I like the La Fontana, and I started smoking that because it's light, and I enjoyed what it was like, and the cost is like in between the highest level and whatever you might get elsewhere. The Torpedo. The Rocky Patel Torpedo Edge Light, always one of my oldest brother's greatest favorites, and then mine too. But that's what the La Fontana to me is like too. It's a smooth cigar. They have 48-foot walk-in humidor, all those great brands. And then some that are owned by military and veterans that they've started their own cigar companies, or they have just really done well with one or two specific cigars. And then, of course, CBD products, Vita Dreams to help you go to sleep. They have for bad days, which is THG for really bad days. If you have chronic pain, that's something I would recommend too. It is Joshua, it's Cheyenne, Don Shumador Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Whoa. My microphone, it seems like it's breaking up. I see where you people in the chat room have been bad today. I see you're on the edge of you people being very bad today. Let's see. someone said if you want to pick who will be the Super League, if they ever do that, which is something I've discussed, I know that others have brought it up too, go back and look at the top 50 most viewed programs last year. I don't know if that would be the cutoff or not. I don't know that, but that's somebody's idea in the chat. Let's see. What is the end game for conference alignment? From MC Gusto. We right now have 3 super conferences. I don't think they're called, we have 4 conferences. I don't think the Big 12 and the ACC are at the level of the Big 10 and the SEC when it comes to clout. That's obvious because those are the conferences right now. They're the ones that are like going to flex their muscles. There are 4 conferences. There was a time when there were 5 power conferences. There was a time back before that where there might have been 8 because you had the Pac-12, you had the Big 8, you had the Southwest Conference, so you had conferences that were what you considered. And then like those words that we put attached to conferences like super conferences or power, you know what that is? That's like trying to separate yourself, which is really what we've been seeing in college football now for about the last 40 years. So I don't know what we'll see in 2030. I don't think that all the schools in the Big 12 and all of them in the ACC, if not all of them, are doing what they're doing and spending the kind of money for facilities and to be involved when it comes to revenue sharing and putting in the $20 million towards athletes moving forward. They're not doing that to be left behind. They're doing that right now to try to stay alive, but I don't think any of them are doing that to be left behind. There's no way that Texas Tech just built that massive football facility or others who have done that. Baylor with the Fudge Center, Nebraska with this football facility that is unheard of and more renovation. I'm just using it. Or Kansas State. Remember when we had their AD, Gene Taylor on. Or even Iowa State with Jamie Paul. You're not doing all that so you could eventually build all that, spend all that money, and then not be a part of the big picture. So that's going to be interesting. But you wonder among the 130-plus FBS football programs how much of them can continue to do that moving forward. We're now joined by Eric Galko, East-West Shrine Bowl, and, of course, runs that All-Star game. Hell, is that an East-West Shrine Bowl helmet behind you? There it is.
Yes, sir, it is. And an XFL helmet back there from my previous job before that. So good to talk to you, David. How you doing, man?
Hey, we're doing well. Craig Smoak with me is too. Eric, thank you very much for being a part of it. Even though you are locked in with that All-Star game, I know you're also incredibly locked in with the talent that is now available for the upcoming NFL draft. Did anything in particular out of the combine, and there might have been 50 stories, but were there 4 or 5 in particular that interest you or caught your attention the most?
You know, I'll start with the guy that was at the Shrine Bowl this year, and that's Shedeur Sanders. I think he ended up being a very substantial part of the discussion for the Combine. I think for the wrong reasons. I think Shedeur's experience, the fact that his father and all the people that his family has been around, from Roger Goodell to a lot of great NFL Hall of Famers, Shedeur just have such a unique perspective on what the NFL life is going to be like that I think it's, I say, disarming to people who are used to a lot of players who have no idea what the NFL is like. Shedeur knows a lot about it. And I think the narrative on Shedeur was discouraging to hear because I've gotten to know him quite a bit too and know the kind of person he is, the leader he is, the genuine, kind person that he is, the player that wants to be great too. So that was a storyline that I didn't love from the NFL Combine, but it was great to see guys. Texas had a lot of players who ran really fast. Marcus Golden, he was a top storyline. The offensive line, it's of course going to be an area that teams want to find the top part of the drafts too. It's a really strong defensive tackle class. So talking with NFL personnel about how those board stacking on the Combine really matters too. A lot of maybe board stacking discussions I had with NFL personnel, but certainly the quarterbacks took the stage at the Combine as far as narratives go.
Eric, in terms of Colorado, obviously Shedeur gets a lot of the attention, as does Travis Hunter. What are your thoughts on a guy like a Jimmy Horn Jr.?
I think the easy report and the first thing you say about Jimmy Horn Jr. is that he's incredibly fast. And I think he showed the Combine, the low 4.4 speed. I think at Colorado Pro Day, he has cracked 4.2 in his life too. So the speed's there as well. But I think what kind of got lost a little bit because he dealt with some injuries this year at Colorado, and they just had so much receiver talent in that unit that people didn't appreciate how smooth he is. And talking with NFL personnel, like the gauntlet drill, which is talked about by NFL personnel, but his gauntlet drill especially was like, man, did you see how smooth he caught the ball, worked in and out? I thought the whole drill workout that he was really special as well too. So he was already going to be likely a draft pick because of his speed, his burst in the open field. But I think NFL teams now see him as, hey, this guy could play for us as a rookie, a really smooth route run. I think he's a guaranteed draft pick. Now it's a matter of, do teams feel he can contribute right away as a rookie? Because if so, the top 4 or 5 rounds seems very possible.
Of the quarterbacks, and you hear about Cam Ward and Craig brings up Shedeur, who is more likely, because of the run that's going to be made, that somebody's going to panic, even if there's who is most likely going to move into the first round that right now is not thought to be first round?
I think there's two guys that really feel like they have a good chance to be first round picks, maybe aren't there right now. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. It'd be pretty shocking if those two guys weren't not only first round picks, but one of the first 4 or 5 picks of the NFL draft. But a couple guys all throughout there, because I think, to your point, one's going to emerge at least as a first round pick. Tyler Shuck at Louisville. His kind of concerns are he's a little bit older. He's had a lot of injury stuff, but he's one of the more natural, talented passers in this quarterback class. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, kind of looked at as a little bit of a developmental guy. He's very young, a lot of tools to develop, but maybe needs a year to kind of redshirt in the NFL before he's ready. That's why maybe he's not a slam dunk first round pick. Kyle McCord at Syracuse. Hey, if he's at Ohio State and he wins a national championship there, I think he's a top 10 overall pick. So teams are wondering kind of is there any disconnect there too, or what's his limitations, but he's a guy that could slide in there. And then Quinn Ewers at Texas, dealt with a lot of injuries this year at Texas. People didn't really know that before the combine. They're learning it since, but talking NFL personnel, and I was on the field during the NFL combine throwing session. Quinn Ewers was the best thrower of the football at the combine in just that throwing session. I think NFL teams saw maybe a glimpse of what a non-injured Quinn Ewers can really be like. So those are the 4 guys, and I think kind of what you alluded to, I think at least one of those guys ends up going in round 1.
Is the running back position viewed differently now than it was a couple of years ago because of what we've just seen with the Bijan Robinsons of the world, but also a guy coming in with a record-breaking contract in Saquon Barkley? I know those guys are like one of ones, but has the view of the running back position shifted again here as of late?
I think it should. To your point, I think the Saquon Barkley shows that a philosophy that I've always felt, which is you probably shouldn't start putting these guys into boxes and say, hey, we need 2 playmakers on our offense. And that may be a tight end for some teams, maybe a receiver for some teams. For the Eagles, it was Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown, right? And they were the 2 playmakers. And worrying about how much money they're making relative to their position and the value and the scarcity, that's important and thoughtful. But I think sometimes you kind of overlook that, man, you know what? Adding Ashton Jeanty to our offense is going to make us pretty awesome. Or adding Quishon Junkins or Travion Henderson or Marion Hampton is going to make our offense a lot better. And he'll be our first or second or at worst third best player in our offense too. So I think the narrative's shifting a little bit, and certainly there's always going to be a value on running back diminished because there's so many good guys coming out of college. That's really the reason why I probably agree with NFL clubs on, but I think no doubt teams are seeing that, hey, adding a big time running back, even if it's a veteran like Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, or adding an early round rookie, I think it helps your offense quite a bit. I think teams are going to maybe be a little more aggressive in taking running backs in the top 2 rounds than they have recently.
All right, so RG3 joined us last Friday, and we brought up the 40, and, of course, some guys that went real low with their numbers, and he, I think, ended up with a 4.34, whatever it might have been. He said that what we may not understand, and you would, is how much of a grind it is before they even run their 40 at the combine, that they could be emotionally and or physically not gassed but worn out before they even do that.
100%. And I think even before they made the combine testing moment later at night for the TV product, which I think makes sense to defend the NFL. I think having this be more in prime time is a good thing for the game, good thing for these players, good thing for all of that. But the combine is, in terms of schedule for the players, is not my favorite. I run the East West Shrine Bowl, and my focus is on player health and wellness all week long. So these guys stay healthy, they have a good time, and they play well. Having these guys up till 11 o'clock at night, grabbing some food, then having interviews throughout the day, having a 7-hour medical process, which that number is accurate. It takes about 6-7 hours for a group to do all their medical stuff. It gets exhausting. And talking to guys on the field at the combine, hearing guys saying, I had to get a cup of coffee before this, or I'm a little bit tired, but I feel good. That's not the ideal conditions to be testing and having those numbers, which now we look at as iconic numbers of this is your Jimmy Horn's a 4.41 guy forever, maybe. And that's not fair if he's not at 100%. So that's why we see a lot of guys opting out of the combine. I do hope the combine, the NFL are able to kind of fix that a little bit to have these guys feel great, because if the guys feel good, they'll run and run better. But I think it's a very good point. That's why guys that run in the low 4.3s or high 4.2s, it's really, really impressive. And that's why a lot of guys will run again at the NFL, at the pro day I think some people kind of diminish the pro day sometimes. Please don't. The pro day is when they're really going to be at their best. That may be their true time in the end of the day.
It seemed like Iowa State had some good representation there at the Combine. Darian Porter and Jalen Knoll in particular. I know there's also, Jaden Higgins is a part of their grouping as well, among others. But Matt Campbell with a couple of guys, if not more, that could be making a big impact, Eric. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Darian Porter was well known as an elite tester coming into the year, and I think he's going to end up going about where he should go in terms of, hey, this guy's a second, third round pick, talent-wise. He may need a year to kind of develop. He's a guy who kind of really emerged this offseason for Iowa State. Maybe he needs a year of refinement. He's going to be an ace special teamer tomorrow in the NFL. But that testing is impressive and was expected by people there as well, too. So happy for Darian. And I think Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, probably been underappreciated this entire season, and maybe as in terms of being draft prospects, too, because Knoll was always going to test really well, had a fantastic NFL combine. He was already going to be a top 100 pick. He solidified being probably a top 70 pick. And I love Jaden Higgins. I think Jaden Higgins has a chance to be a first-round pick in this draft. I think he's an outstanding outside receiver, a big-body guy, can win downfield, can win on the perimeter, made a lot of big catches for Iowa State this year in crunch time, too. I think he's a guy that is a top 32 player in this draft class, and I think Jalen Knoll is probably a top 50 guy. And even a pretty good receiving class, we might see some guys not go top 10, but a good bit go in the top 70. I think Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll will be probably the first 7 or 8 receivers off the board.
Conyers at Tech had a big week, didn't he?
Absolutely. He's a guy that transferred from Arizona State to Texas Tech and kind of got forgotten about after having a really good early start to his career, but special person, got a chance to know him quite well at the East West Shrine Bowl, and really gregarious, great personality, like an awesome person to hang out with, and an immensely talented player. Had one of, if not the best week of any tight end at the Shrine Bowl, and then followed it up now with an elite NFL combine. This is a really special talent that's really showed in the draft process. And you guys talk to Joey McGuire or James Blanchard at Texas Tech, they'll rave about Conyers as a person and as a player too. And it's a strong tight end class. People like it quite a bit too. But after those first 4 or 5, I think Conyers may be a surprising guy that can go maybe top 100, but if not, he won't last long on the third day of the NFL draft.
Eric, and this is kind of off the top of my head question, but do you remember somebody who had a terrible combine who made up for it with pro days and everything after that still saved where they would have been originally in the draft?
That's a good question, and no name pops out in particular too, but I think there's unfortunately stories that didn't happen, right? Where a guy had a tough combine for reasons that we may not know, and they go later than they should, and then they have many great players as well too. So, guys like Jarvis Landry ran a 4.6 at the NFL combine, right? And he fell to being a 3rd round pick when he should have been a first, 2nd round pick. And I think in hindsight, Jarvis Landry's career says he should have been a 1st round pick too. So I think the combination of guys that may not test well, sometimes that can really help out the smart teams because those guys go a bit later too. But I think a lot of players, thankfully, are able to kind of recover at pro day. And that's why I always tell people that, hey, even though pro day feels almost secondary, it's a really, really important metric to consider for these guys.
Well, I got to ask you because there's been somebody that's worked with various all-star games that is now a part of a college football program. Has that ever been something you'd be interested in, and have you ever been contacted?
I have been contacted, and I think the changing level of college football is fascinating and exciting, and I think it's really been interesting to hear and great to talk to college coaches and people in that industry to kind of learn about how they view it going. We all think we have an idea of what it is, but some teams want to build things in terms of focus on high school and a little bit of portal. Some teams want to do more portal. Some teams want to fleece their staff. Some teams want to be efficient. It's been great to kind of learn from a lot of great college coaches and college ADs and talk to them myself and learn what they want as well too. Really happy for Jim Nagy. I'll miss competing against him at the Senior Bowl when he was down there, and he and I overlapped for the last 4 years too. But he's a great hire for Oklahoma, and I think they're lucky to have him because in this job and in his job, he had a chance to meet with a lot of people, whether it's college head coaches, NFL GMs, agents, etc. That wealth of experience really serves people like him and people like myself well, and I think he's doing a great job at Oklahoma too. But no doubt, NFL college teams are looking for NFL people, maybe unique people to kind of build this new front office of college football. And I think there's more changes coming for sure in the future of college athletics.
Has it been any different working with athletes? Have you noticed a change in that now they're making money before they even get to you, right? And in some cases making really, really good money, whereas before, $500 handshakes and the like were going on. Has that turned into any difference in the guys you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis from your end?
100%. I think for one, guys still in college, these players are able to better understand and articulate their value and where they want to get better, right? No longer can college just say, come here, here's a bag, and come to this school too. They've got to really show value monetarily, but also, hey, tell me how I fit in. And I think the power that these athletes have now to be empowered because they're not worried financially as much as they used to be. 7-8 years ago, a guy was in college and he was betting everything on making the NFL. Now in college, you can make six figures easily at a Power 5 program, and you can be okay for the rest of your life after that, if not too. So it gives a lot of players a lot more financial stability, and they can make their own decisions. And I think for the draft process, I got to see with Cam Ward last year, who I knew very well for the last couple of years, and his family. And he used his year at Miami, that offseason going into it, to say, okay, what do I need to do to get ready for the NFL draft process, which was 12 months away, right? Working with private coaches, doing interview prep, talking to people, getting information. I think the fact of NIL, the portal allowing these guys to be in good situations, and the fact that these guys are able to kind of stay in school a bit longer allows these guys to take a full year to get ready for the NFL. So no doubt, compared to 4 or 5 years ago, across the board, players are more well-equipped, more prepared, and understand what the NFL is like more than ever because of NIL, the portal, and guys having extra eligibility too. So it's changed. And I think NFL teams, we should see the hit rate on NFL teams getting draft picks right skyrocket from last year and the next couple of years too, because these guys are really well prepared for the NFL.
We brought up quarterbacks, and Bill Parcells, back in the day, had a deal where he wanted his quarterbacks, if he was going to draft somebody, to be a senior, which back then more of them were, 30 starts and had won 75% of those starts. Is that possible as much anymore in this day and age of where things are in college football? Does that still work to this day, or is that way too old school?
No, I think it makes sense. And I think what the heart of that thesis is you want guys who have seen a lot and are experienced, right? And I think that's one thing that maybe for a while their NFL clubs, whether it's Trey Lance or Mitch Trubisky, teams kind of saying, hey, we'll bet on talent and develop these guys. And there's something to be said for just getting reps. I learned a lot from getting a chance to work with Brock Purdy and having him, make a small part of his journey at the East-West Shrine Bowl and talking with Brock and reviewing it. And especially in hindsight, okay, what maybe I not even appreciate as much as I should have about Brock Purdy? It's that Brock had multiple offenses he ran in college, lost some games, made some mistakes, learned from those mistakes too. And, I was talking to Jordan Palmer, a private QB coach, and even John Beck as well, about the same topic of, hey, these guys need to have adversity at some point, because if you have adversity before the NFL, when that adversity hits in the NFL, it's going to take a lot out of you. And I think the guys that have gone through a lot, whether it's tough games, an injury, a coaching change, a losing season, whatever, having that adversity or having those challenges in college really allow you for the NFL to be prepared. Sam Darnold had some adversity in college, but his adversity came in the NFL, and thankfully he's made a great career afterwards. But having guys that have down slopes or downward career in college can make you a better player. Bo Nix, a great example of that. Had to transfer from Auburn to Oregon, had to learn a whole new system, and his certainly meets that threshold of 75% wins and 30-plus starts, and he's able to make the NFL transition much, much easier too. So the why behind that theory, I think, makes a lot of sense. Maybe a little bit different now, to your point, but the why is still really, really important in quarterback evaluation.
Eric, do you go to some of whatever's available now with spring, and we don't know if there's spring practices? Of course, the games are starting to be minimized, but you already have another game to get ready for. You have an all-star game to prep for in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. Are you like a coach who looks at it as too deep and you have to fill the blanks in again? Are you already doing that now?
I'm looking at right now at our quarterback board for next year on this whiteboard in front of me too. So no, we've got a good sense, and it helps a lot of these guys. Thankfully, the fact that juniors are allowed at all-star games, one of the huge benefits is that agents and players and their families will kind of reach out and use the all-star game as a, hey, if he came out, where do you think he'd go? So we have a good sense for a lot of these guys, not just from an evaluation standpoint, but also personally too. And I think next year's quarterback class is going to be probably a little more top-heavy than this year's class for sure too. But no doubt we've got a great staff and a great team of young rising scouts, as well as a lot of former experienced NFL scouts on our staff, and we'll kind of probably finish our initial big board for next year's draft before this year's draft even happens. So we're certainly far ahead too. In the 2026 Shrine Bowl, the 101st Shrine Bowl is coming around in about 11 months now, but we'll be ready to go.
Proud of what you've done. Appreciate it. Eric Galko has been with us, and I had Eric on a long, long time ago. And from the East-West Shrine Bowl, he runs that baby, and a part of our show today. When we come back, Craig Smoak has Off the Radar around the corner. Tarleton State, they're trying to grow with this new landscape in college athletics, and they're keeping up, or at least they're gaining on where they were just 2, 3, 4 years ago. We'll talk with their AD about that, Steve Urias, and we're not done because we have much more to get to, including Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. I contacted Bob Mock, the owner of 5 locations in the Waco area, Hewitt, Woodway, Belmead, China Spring, and also in Robinson. I said, hey, give me something new if you don't already think I have it. He talked about the Marco's More menu. Here's what it is. Spend $7.99 or more, and add-on items starting after that are $5 a piece. Use the code word if you go online of More Menu. Makes sense. For example, if you get a pizza or whatever it is for $7.99, you have pepperoni on it. You want to add Italian sausage, or you want to add more ingredients. $5 each as you add on or other parts of that meal that doesn't have to just be pizzas. Marco's Pizza online. Pizza lovers get it. Fastest growing pizza brand in America. Fastest growing pizza brand in America. And think about all of the pizza brands that you may have known since the time you were growing up. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new business.
All right, here we are. We're back. Had something go corrupt in that break. Sorry about that, and it wasn't Garrett Ross. When we come back, of course, at the top of the hour, I set up the schedule, but now it's time for Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. Craig?
All right, yeah, thanks. Here we are on a Thursday, as usual.
Is his mic on? Go
Am
ahead.
I on? Okay. Yeah. I don't know what we're doing here. All right, here we go, Off the Radar. With some stories from around the world of sports and not always necessarily college football, but let's get started in the world of boxing, where a big announcement was made about a new promotion. And I don't know how many people out there right now could name a current boxing champion. I know I would have a hard time doing that. It's not a sport that I follow. It's one that I used to follow. I know there's some hardcore fans of it out there. It still has its place, but I just feel like it's sort of lost in the shuffle, and maybe that will be shaken up now that there's a new promotion in the works, or maybe depending on who's running it, you think this will be just more of the same. But Dana White of the UFC, as well as Nick Khan, WWE president, both a part of TKO Sports, of course, the TKO group that has not only WWE and UFC under its umbrella, but grabbing up all sorts of other things as well. TKO has announced a multi-year partnership with Turki Al-Sheikh, who is chairman of the Stop if you've heard this before. The Saudi General Entertainment Authority, a subsidiary of the Saudi Arabian PIF Public Investment Fund, which has been throwing around billions of dollars when it comes to what some would feel like is sports washing, but just in general, tons of investments around various sports and leagues here in America and across the world, and this looks to be their latest venture, a new boxing promotion, which will be led by UFC President and CEO Dana White and WWE President and TKO board member Nick Khan. TKO will be the managing partner and run the day-to-day operations of the promotion, but White and Khan will be in charge. White, for a long time, has been very outspoken about his love of boxing and being a fan, but also very much being against those who run boxing. He's called them corrupt, and he's admonished some of the business practices and just kind of the way things are done. And so it's been rumored for a very long time that somebody with a love of boxing like Dana, who also knows how to run a combat sports, a very successful combat sports company, once they started doing dealings with the Saudis, there was even more talk. And then TKO got involved, and they buy UFC and they buy WWE, and now you see this all sort of coming together. But there is a new boxing promotion that will be launched as a part of a business deal with Saudi Arabia, and it will be held the first card in 2026. No fighters have been announced. No broadcast rights have been secured, so there will be no official date, just that loose date of 2026 as in terms of a start. They had a press conference. White talked about going into business with people that he trusts, and he wouldn't do this if he wasn't going into business with the people that he wants. It's not about money. It's about the sport. It's about having fun, doing all those types of things. So I'm gonna have to wait a little while, over a year, to actually see this in ring. There's also no name for it, so really all of the details are fill in the blank at the moment outside of who will be running it and who is behind it. But do you have any appetite for a new boxing promotion that maybe can fix some of what people feel like ails the sport of boxing?
I don't get to talk about it enough because it's just gone like every once in a while there's a great fight. But absolutely, there was a time when that was my second favorite sport. Because of when I was growing up, especially in the late 60s and 70s, the amount of amazing Hall of Fame type names, and especially in the heavyweight division. So I used to get Ring Magazine, like I used to get Sports Illustrated. I can't remember the last time I did and received a Ring Magazine or saw one. Maybe it's still out there, or maybe it's online. But yeah, I would love to see boxing have somebody that does it right. Now, is there always going to be politics? Is there always going to be politics involved or whatever? But I like what Khan has done with what he does and what Dana White's done with what he does. So having them and whoever else together, to me, I think they would do what's best for the sport and not just because they have egos.
Yeah,
and money.
And I think that there's a lot that needs changing, and I'll run down some of kind of what they outlined there. But I do think there are people involved that have had some success in this area, and that's what encourages you. I think Canelo Alvarez even came out and said that he thinks this will be a plus for boxing. I mean, for one, it just provides you another place. I think of, I don't try to always go to wrestling. There's a lot of comparisons, but for a long time, you just had WWE, and that was it. So as an industry, it was just kind of stagnant and stale, and there weren't a lot of great opportunities. Now you've got a couple of companies, and what that at the very minimum allows you to do is have opportunities, but also everybody's getting paid way more money because now there's competition. So you want to outspend the other to get the guy, and so when a contract comes up, you suddenly have multiple suitors. You got better negotiations, you get better perks, better money, all of that, instead of it being a one-horse town where they basically tell you take it or leave it because we're the only horse in town. I think having options is a great thing. So boxers will have a new big option coming here in the next few months and years in what right now I guess could just be referred to loosely and unofficially as TKO boxing because, again, there's no name, there's no fighters. All we know is there will be a boxing promotion. The Saudis, Dana White, Nick Khan are all involved on the TKO side of thing, and that's about all we know. Al Sheikh from the Saudi PIF side of things has promoted fights, big fights. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk was one of those that was cited. The people involved are big time in the entertainment side of things. There were 3 bullet points that highlighted the press conference. yesterday. That does give you a little bit more details on kind of where their head is at, but they want a highly structured system to develop new talent from around the world, including athlete combines and academies. They've already announced that all boxers will have access to the UFC Performance Institute out in Las Vegas, which has which they call the world's leading combat sports performance training, research, rehab, and nutrition center. And it's also got locations in Mexico City and Shanghai. So pretty much wherever you are, you can find a spot to go into. We drove by it every day, basically, when we were in Las Vegas. Yep. Really nice looking place, really sharp, a lot of room. And so boxers, part of this company, will be able to go check out those facilities as well as the ones in Mexico City and Shanghai. But also they promise that their production, media, and promotional expertise on the TKO side of things will also deliver both in-arena experiences and top-tier, state-of-the-art broadcast to fans around the world. So basically they're going to do what the UFC and WWE have done as far as the splashiness and the graphics and all those things that look great and are great for the promotions, just appeal and look and commercialization, all those things. But it's just a lot of what the UFC and WWE are already doing, just bringing it to the boxing world. And I guess the one big complaint I've seen, and by the way, Ring Magazine was a part of this announcement, so you wondered if they still exist. They were on the banner along with TKO and the other company involved. But there is some trepidation because not every UFC fighter's fat and happy. Not every UFC fighter feels like Dana White's the best boss. There are lots of guys and gals and lots of stories of him not being the most generous, but there's also those who have done very, very well underneath him. I guess it's just sort of where you are on the totem pole. But there has been a little bit of pushback just because not everybody's super fond of Dana White. A lot of people don't feel like he's necessarily fair to all of his fighters. And he is a guy who has genuinely benefited from being the biggest promotion in the world, although there's been competition here and there, but that's allowed him to kind of not have to deal with the competition aspect of paying for fighters all the time that I spoke about a moment ago. So this looks like it'll probably shake up the boxing world, but we'll get more details over the coming year or so. But Dana White, Nick Khan, and the Saudis opening up a new boxing promotion to take on the rest of the world. So
I just looked up and I went to the ESPN and went to boxing. There are 4 different belts now that you can win to be a heavyweight champion.
Just the heavyweights.
Yeah. Usyk beat Fury, who had been kind of the dude. WBO, IBF, WBA, and WBC. And there's always that hope that you can consolidate those to have, like when Ali or Frazier or Foreman, there were still some offset at times, but that would help if you had your undisputed type fights that you could get, but I think that's going to be hard to do. Hopefully they can help do that.
Yeah, I don't know how they could go about doing that because there are so many people with interests and pockets that they want to fill, but that would be great for boxing. It would be really good for boxing. I don't mind having a couple of different companies that have different champions, but having 4 different heavyweight champions is just kind of silly. Having all these companies and you don't IBF, WBO, it's confusing for the common fan. I know the hardcores, the sickos, never care really about the casual fan, but why would you not want more people enjoying your product?
Right.
I think you got to appeal a little bit to the casuals, and it can't always be, well, Floyd Mayweather's coming back and he's fighting this. He's fighting this unknown Paul brother we just discovered, and like this, because that's what it's been.
How many former NFL stars or NBA stars or baseball stars come out of retirement and then join the league again? Very few, right? And in boxing, though, it seems like that happens all the time, where it's always the retreads that come back to fight because they're going to get $50 or $100 million.
Well, I mean, there's like a big fight, like Lamont Roach and Gervonta Davis, and they had a lot of people talking because there was some controversy. Like, there's some good fighters, but I just think where the money is at and the attention is at, there's more people ponying up for Logan Paul or Jake Paul versus Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition than they are for. Well, I don't think most of those people can name who the heavyweight champion is. And that's the problem with boxing.
I knew about Usyk, but I did not know the other 2, and I didn't even know the names of the guys you just mentioned that fought, which I should because
because they're reality stars.
Yeah,
they're not boxers.
Right.
I know. I guess Jake Paul technically is a boxer at this point, but he's very much predetermined the route and who he's fighting, and they're typically very over the hill or have health problems or whatever. So anyways, that's what's been getting most of the eyeballs, but there have been Roach and Davis and fights like that still going on. But regardless, will those guys, Davis, Roach, those types of folks be a part of this new company? I don't know, but Dana White and the Saudis with a brand new boxing promotion. So there you go with that. We don't have time, I don't think, for anything else.
You got time. No, you do. We got 5:10. Go ahead.
Okay. Klay Thompson, some interesting comments by his father as the Mavericks continue to just I don't even know what the right word is. I'll say drowning in their own tears, but they're not crying. They're out there talking. You got Nico still talking about Kobe Bryant as though Mavericks fans give a damn about Kobe Bryant. I mean, he's holding this guy up like he's Dirk Nowitzki, and every comparison he's making, he was talking about the Kyrie injury, and he compared him to Kobe as far as a competitor and how he'll be back. And I get the comparison. I get the respect that especially modern-day basketball players have for Kobe Bryant. But, dude, you are the GM of the Dallas effing Mavericks, not the Lakers. You might be the Lakers GM in about a year after the deal you helped them finagle, but you are the Mavericks GM. So can we at least use Dirk for comparisons of superstars when we're talking about your guys? Nevertheless, with that rant, as I'm just a peeved-off ex-fan at this point who gets madder by the day every time I see that moron open his mouth. But somebody opened their mouth was the father of Klay Thompson. As you might imagine, with the Anthony Davis injury and now the Kyrie injury, it's not quite what Klay Thompson envisioned when he first joined the Mavericks. So you might know his father, Michael Thompson. He says on ESPN Los Angeles that he thought with Luka and Kyrie talking about Klay Thompson that he had a chance to get back to the finals. Obviously, Luka left. I told him, well, when AD is coming, you still got a chance to get to the finals because AD's that good. Then he's hurt. And then Gafford got hurt. Then Lively got hurt. So, yeah, Klay's stuck in purgatory right now. I think they're going to lose 10 in a row. And so that was just his response to the rash of injuries. And, I mean, I haven't really thought about Klay Thompson, but this made me do it for a second. And I don't feel bad for him because the dude's making millions of dollars to play a sport. But this is not what he signed up for in the slightest. He signed up to play with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And there's no way he could have foreseen, because nobody did, Luka getting traded away. But then even what you get in return, oh, cool, I'll play with Anthony Davis. That'll be great. And maybe you even thought, like some people initially, of this might actually be a better team because of just the way the pieces fit together. I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think they'll be on the court ever together long enough. It won't be this year because, I mean, Kyrie's done. Davis has played all of like 30 minutes.
Yeah, one game, right?
Yeah, it was the first game, and then he got hurt in that first. He didn't play the whole game. So that was just Michael Thompson talking about Klay, just feeling like he's in purgatory right now. I don't blame him because, I mean, who signed up for this? He certainly didn't sign up for this, and neither did most fans. So
it is. It's amazing what they've done. It's amazing how this franchise, a Mavericks franchise, continues to be, and I used that term, I think, yesterday, or the tone deaf. It's amazing now that they want to raise prices, ticket prices. They are on the verge of absolutely just being empty for a long time. Empty for a long, long time with decisions they've made and how they try to continue to double down on it. And as you said, bringing up Kobe and not Dirk was just even just dumb.
It's just a pet peeve because that's the guy he always talks about. And I get he was Kobe's right-hand guy, so I understand that. But it's like, dude, you just traded the biggest star this franchise has had since Dirk, and the biggest star the franchise will ever have outside of Dirk until some unknown comes along maybe one day, if you're lucky. And you traded him to your buddies, and now you're using Kobe and all the comparisons when it comes to current Mavs players and getting injured. Like, read the effing room, dude. Like, how could somebody, and at this point I go, how could somebody be as clueless? I don't think he's clueless. I just think he's a narcissist that doesn't care. And that's even worse, that he's in charge of a team that he clearly doesn't care or doesn't understand, the vibe of. And so, good riddance. I feel great as each passing day goes by and each Maverick story drops about my decision making. So yeah, there you go. Klay Thompson's dad he's feeling for his son, and Klay Thompson just got to get through these next few games. They're not in a playoff spot as of now. They've lost 3 in a row. Now there's no reason to believe they'll win many games. So the season will be over soon, Thompson family. Don't worry about it. It will all be over soon. All right, and final thing is just a couple of notes from around the NFL. The Bengals have granted All-Pro D-end Trey Hendrickson the ability to seek a trade. He is 17.5 sacks. He had 17.5 sacks last season, which was the best in the league. Dude's a star player, but Adam Schefter reporting that he has been given permission to seek a trade. He did say to Schefter the whole, to do about it's been an honor and privilege to represent Cincy over the last 4 years, loves the city, loves the team, the organization, appreciates how they are allowing him to now explore his options. So that's another big pass rusher that will go out on the market. We learned also Joey Bosa being released as well, which I think a lot of people reacting to the name and not so much maybe the performance or the health or things like that, because, yeah, it's a big splash name, but it's also not maybe what it's made out to be in terms of the totality of the player. But the Chargers releasing Joey Bosa, a lot of people thinking he could reunite with his brother Nick there for the 49ers. And also with some NFL news out there, I thought we'd get more into this with Paul here, but he's not here today. So we'll just kind of touch on him briefly. But also the Texans have brought Christian Kirk into the fold via a trade with the Jaguars. So he will be returning to Texas, where, of course, he played for the Aggies in college. But the Texans already have some pretty good receivers, and they will now add the veteran in Christian Kirk in exchange for a 2026 7th-round pick. So that obviously not at his peak powers by any means, but it is an interesting name and somebody in that room that it's fun to think about for a Texans fan in particular.
Is Diggs still a part of them? Is his contract still hooked into Houston? I'm not sure if it is or not, but Kirk is a big play guy if he stays healthy, of course. I'm not so sure, but had some explosive plays throughout his career.
Yep. So, I think Diggs is, as far as I know, he's a part of I don't know what his contract off the top of my head is, but you just got him. So I'd imagine you'd think so. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to speculate. I have no idea off the top of my head. But so there was that move as well with Christian Kirk being out, Christian Kirk going to Houston in a trade, Joey Bosa, free agent, Trey Hendrickson can seek a trade, and those are just some of the highlights, and there are a few things off the radar. Okay, so Kirk now added, Diggs is added, Nico Collins, obviously, Tank Dell, he's been hurt, Michi, Woods, Xavier Hutchinson, Big 12 player. Their room's pretty good with him, and hopefully he can be healthy. Otherwise, Nico Collins had a really, really big year for them. And, did you look up Stephon Diggs' contract as we were talking about? Let me see if I can get it. It doesn't look like he's under contract, so I don't know. I don't think he is maybe under contract at this point. So he will be a guy that, is just out there to sign with anybody. So, I guess Texans will only sign wide receiver to team-friendly contract after injury, which that makes sense. So, I'm sure that's playing into it quite a bit. The Diggs brothers, Trayvon and Stephon, have had injury issues. Trayvon, of course, was big money, but is trying to get back from a horrific knee injury. All right, thank you, Craig. That it? Appreciate that. Steve Urias will join us next. He's the director of athletics at Tarleton State. They got a lot going on, including a gym, an arena, a basketball. It's hard to explain what Wisdom Gym has meant to that school, and they close it down tonight and tomorrow, plus their plans with the NCAA and House settlement. Their plans as they continue to climb the ladder. We've kind of followed that Tarleton State athletic story, and that's next. This is 365 Sports. We don't have Pioneer. It's off. Don't worry about it. Go straight to the break.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at Baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26
26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
365 Sports continues. We start, of course, the rest of this 5 o'clock hour. And we have followed that Tarleton State Athletics Department. Steve Urias joins us. He's the AD at Tarleton State, and a lot going on. I mean, my goodness. How you doing? Good to see you, Steve.
I'm doing great. It's been 11 months right now, so it has been amazing.
Well, it's great to have you. Appreciate your time. Let's go down the checklist, but let's start with tonight and tomorrow. What has Wisdom Gym meant to Tarleton State Athletics?
It's amazing. The history is unbelievable. Excited about tonight. Our women play. It is the last women's basketball game in Wisdom Gym, a historic building, 52 years. And then we have our men that play there on Saturday. So doing all sorts of unique promotions. It's been fun for us across the board. And hoping that our students will come out, have a great time. We did some food and drink specials for the last game. We carried the drink specials over, if you know what I mean, to this Saturday night, and it's going to be great.
I saw this. It was on your Twitter feed. I happened to catch it on my timeline. That one of the largest comebacks in college basketball history occurred there in 2004 when Tarleton trailed by 30 at halftime.
Yep.
In the Lone Star Conference tournament, came back in the semis to beat A&M Kingsville. That's part of the historical note about Wisdom Gym.
There are so many games out there, and we're excited. We've got former coaches coming back, Coach Hearn on the women's side, and Lon Reisman will be here. Obviously, you guys know Lon continues to be an icon at Tarleton State. Just some great stories. If you go into the lobby of Wisdom Gym, you can see all that. And it marks the end of Wisdom for basketball, but the beginning of the new event center. And guys, I can tell you the event center somewhat mirrors what was built down there in Waco, about the same size. We hold about 7,500 when that opens in August. So it's going to be a great, great transition.
You're talking about the pavilion, right? The Foster Pavilion?
I am talking about the Foster Pavilion. Same architect and everything. So if you come to Stephenville, Texas, and look at our basketball arena, you'll see lots of similarities. And I can just tell you this, in terms of institutions our size, it's every bit of a Power 4 basketball facility.
You know, you've seen the growth in how college athletics, especially really the last 4 to 5 years, it's nuts. It's like on steroids. But West Virginia, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Nebraska, these are all schools that are in it to win it, and they have had to grow, and they've had to add, and they've had to raise money, and they've had to do this, and they've had to do that. How much of that has helped you with what Tarleton is trying to do now as you enter this next new phase or whatever it might be in college athletics?
Yeah, it does help immensely because, it's just like anything else. There's a trickle down and trickle across effect. So being at Power 4, as we call them now, or Power 5 schools as they used to be known, gave me a leg up because I kind of saw what was coming. So for us, as you know, we opted in before March 1st, the deadline, and made sure that we were ready to go there. But we're committed to do that, and it did help immensely. I lived the last 4 years and watched the transformation of college athletics while I was deputy AD at West Virginia, and just an amazing change. Unique. I think those are things that a lot of those would have helped us to happen to a certain extent a decade ago, because as you know, we didn't give student athletes much back then. And so for us, it gives us an opportunity to kind of make that correction, to open some doors. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're committed at Tarleton State to compete at the highest level. And that's what's great. I've got a president here that has put us in a position, Dr. Hurley, to really go out and compete really in every one of our sports.
So opting in, does that mean opting in where we see that figure? What is the figure for Tarleton State? Is it the same it might be for the University of Georgia?
Yeah, no, it's not. So as you know, yeah, I would love it if it was that amount. But, as you know, the figure for those Power 4 institutions is right at $20.5 million. Mm-hmm. We haven't finalized our number yet. It doesn't even come anywhere near that. And it just shows, though, it's all proportionate. So what we take a look at is all of our revenues, all the different streams that we have, and then we turn around and figure out, at what point and at what number can we rev share. We've committed to increase our scholarships, which is important to many of our programs, and make sure that not only on the football side, but many of our women's programs get enhanced as well and get scholarships so that there's an offset from that standpoint.
I think it's great. I think, again, I wasn't trying to compare, but it is unbelievable that here you are. You've made all these commitments. My God, why not continue to make sure you stay up with it?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing. If you drive onto our campus, and I said this to you the first time that we talked, and you take all the logos off, you would think that you're at a Power 4 institution. The football facility is amazing. Just finished our new field there. Today was the first day our football team had been on it. A great new playing surface. Looks a lot like the one in Waco. Same company put it down. Excited about that. Event Center opens in early August. Just a tremendous, tremendous venue for our student athletes. Volleyball gets the old Wisdom Gym. So, there's a lot of institutions at the Power 4 level that don't have a dedicated volleyball facility. Tarleton State does. We're building a 8,100 square foot weight room as we speak. Took the old volleyball gym and turned it into that. So our commitment is really strong. Opting in was the first move that direction. And then as July 1 comes around, we get our ruling. We're in the game.
Steve, I mentioned earlier in the show about Friday night football at the college level. I think the Big 12 tomorrow will release some more details on they've released the schedule, the conference schedule, and everybody's given out their schedule, but dates and times and networks and all that can change, as you know. And I think there'll be a couple of new Friday games that are not Friday games right now when it's announced sometime tomorrow. You are playing Army that first Friday. I guess it's the first full weekend of college football. First of all, that's awesome that you're playing Army. Awesome. It's incredible. We had their quarterback, Bryson Daly, on the show, who, of course, is from what town is it up in? Abernathy, Texas. It was great.
Oh,
what
sure.
Incredible.
Right outside of Lubbock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're playing Army on a Friday night. The tradition of that game, what is that going to mean?
It's amazing. Our fans are really excited. Obviously, it was already scheduled for a Saturday. We've known for a little while that they've been working with TV to get that done, but it's going to be great. And we actually start a week before that. We again have a week 0 game at Portland State. So we, in many cases, will have 2 games underneath our belt before any other schools have played one across the country. And I think that helps us too. But the history of Army, our fans are excited. We've got a big group of donors and fans that are going to go out early, actually tour the campus at Army, participate in some neat rituals. As you know, or maybe not know, Dr. Hurley has a son that's at Army.
Did not know that.
And so there's a unique connection there, and he really worked to make this all happen.
Have you been to West Point before?
I have not.
Oh my God, Steve, you're gonna. It's if you've flown into New York before, right?
Oh, many a time.
Well,
yeah.
you know this. They got all the skyscrapers and the way it is, and all the in the Hudson River. But you can see West Point when you go into New York. It's off to the right, and you could just see the lush. Now it depends on the time of the year, but
Sure.
you will absolutely just love that. That's amazing. You guys are going to have that trip.
Yeah, we are so looking forward to it, and so are our fans. And the other thing that's unique, if you take a look at our history as an institution, the core, our core of cadets.
Mm-hmm.
There's such a great connection there. So our plan is to take as many of those guys as we can in one way, shape, or form, because it's a neat experience, once in a lifetime for our athletes and for our students that'll be able to join us.
Okay, so there's a lot of money. It takes a lot of money. It takes an amazing amount of commitment. Donors, alums, businesses, sponsors, and everything else. Since you've been there, are you blown away by how much the giving, knowing that there's still going to need to be more? But what's been the reaction to the growth around where you are?
Yeah, it's amazing because we've got great sponsors across the board. We're doing more and more. In the not too distant future, we'll announce a naming right for our event center, the basketball and facility that we're excited about. Our goal is to do naming rights on fields and on courts.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just where we are in college athletics. Sponsorships, donations, ticket sales, all those types of things have to continue to grow if we want to compete. And I can tell you our people want to compete. And it was funny. I talked to Ross Bjork before I ever took the job. And Ross said, Steve, when you show up at Tarleton State for that first football game and you look at the tailgating, you'll go, my God, where am I? And it's amazing what our fans do in Stephenville, Texas for Tarleton State athletics.
We mentioned Wisdom Gym, which is about to be closed down after the next couple of nights, but that was built 55, 54, or they opened it
52 years ago.
52 years ago.
Jake Withy told me. Really amazing. I'm looking out the window here looking at it because it's such a special historic facility to Tarleton State.
One of those successful stories is your women's basketball program. And no surprise whatsoever, Bill Brock was a huge part of the great run that Baylor had when it came to women's basketball, when Kim Mulkey had built what she did before she went to LSU. And, of course, he was at McLennan, too. The guy's a genius, a defensive wizard, a post-player wizard. Love him to death as far as when I got a chance to interview him. Has he exceeded anybody's expectations?
I think he's exceeded everybody's expectations. And Bill brings to our institution that perspective of a Power Four, which really helps our student athletes. And it's fun to watch him coach. He's very intense. Mm-hmm. I actually worked with Bill when he was on Christy Curry's staff at Texas Tech. A tremendous recruiter. He's a go-getter there. And he is very smart in basketball. But also what's important, he's a great guy. And I think that's now as important as anything when you take a look at college athletics, the visibility, and those types of things.
This is maybe not an easy question to answer, but as you grow, and what Tarleton State has done is phenomenal. It really is. And we have you on. We've had you on a couple of times. We've had the president on. We've had others on too, but Coach Witten on. We've done that. But as it grows, you're catching up, and then all of a sudden the top of football might be changing again. How do you keep up with that, and does that concern you?
Yeah, I mean, everything changes every day. And it's kind of interesting. The way we live here right now is we do everything we can to compete with where we are right now. And the ultimate goal, and we've never hid that, Dr. Hurley has never hid that Tarleton State at some point would like to be in an FBS football situation. Do we have a timeline? Do we have this, that, and whatever? The answer is no. So every day when we wake up, it's what can we do to put ourselves in a position to continue to grow, to make sure that gap doesn't get wider. And as well as I do, you look at everything that's going on with the SEC and the Big Ten and all the discussions that are going on. I do worry about the future of college athletics and the gaps that could exist, if those situations or those conferences were to be something different than what they are right now.
Enjoy tonight and tomorrow. It's kind of, I guess, reminiscing for some, a little bit melancholy, a surreal, and yet exciting. All the emotions you can have in a person, that probably happens the next couple of nights. Am I right?
You guys could be up here pretty quickly. We got dollar beers again, so you certainly feel free to come on up.
I love that you're doing that. I love it. I love the forward thinking. I love thinking outside the box. I love that you're doing that. I love it. And what Tarleton's done. We cover a lot of college sports, and even though we're in Waco, it's not that far to Stephenville. Well, we keep up with as much college sports as we possibly can, especially at football and athletic departments and the growth and all of that, and we're proud of what you're doing, man. We really are.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys having me on, and as always, come on up to Stephenville. We'd love to host you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your time. Steve Urias, he is the AD at Tarleton State University. And again, I gave you the schools where he has been. And so he has all that history with what's happened when he was at Tech or Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and also in Lincoln at Nebraska. When we come back, Scott Drew, huge win earlier this week on the road against TCU. Houston on Saturday, very late night tip. It's a really late tip. And then, of course, the Big 12 tournament and NCAA tournament. It has been a grind. Scott Drew is next. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store located on Lake Air Drive in Waco. They have, it's too late. No, wait a minute. Whoa. Yeah, it is. It is, because you have to order their live crawfish before noon on Thursdays. 30-pound sacks of live crawfish. These are some dudes now. $4.20 a pound this week. It could be less next week, but it's there. If you order 30-pound sacks, as many as you can order, as much as they have available, 30-pound sacks of live crawfish, you could order by noon on Thursday, pick it up on Friday afternoon or sometime if you have a chance when they're open on Saturday. Place by noon Thursday, pick up anytime after 4 o'clock on Friday. They also have peeled and deveined shrimp specials going on right now. Imported catfish available right now, 15 pounds, $41 for a case of that for your fish fry if that's what you want to do. Crawfish boils, fish fries, and great food. Butcher shop with tremendous steaks available. My favorite, the bone-in ribeyes. When I call, and I do call ahead to get some bone-in ribeyes for them, I want about 1.25 inches, and I mean some dudes, alphas, and they do that. They cut them exactly the way I want. They're fantastic. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He love with Rudy's Tasty Oak Smoked Barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Paul is out. He'll be back with us tomorrow. Craig Smoak with some news on Baylor football.
Yeah, just a little bit of roster news here, breaking in the last 15 or so minutes. But running back Richard Reese, who has played the last 3 years at Baylor, had a big-time freshman season a couple of years back, rushing for nearly 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, has announced that he is entering the transfer portal. Did the whole spiel, first and foremost, thanked everybody, and then after much prayer and consideration, decided to enter the portal. The journey's far from over, and excited for what's next. Thank you, Baylor Nation, for everything. He did say in the first and foremost part of it, wearing green and gold has been an honor, and all the usual to do, but very nice send-off by Richard Reese. And a bit surprising, although I'm not shocked by it. I mean, I got the sense that you guys were shocked by it when I mentioned it, but here's a guy who saw his carries, which kind of flatlined last year, had 58 carries, 241 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches, 41 yards. The year prior had 8 more carries, had 1 more touchdown, had 70 or so more yards. Year prior had 1 more catch, a little bit less yards. But in 2022, I mean, he had more carries then than he had in the past 2 years combined. Had 11 more touchdowns than in the past 2 years combined. Had 400 more yards than the past 2 years combined. So he was big time as a freshman, but it's definitely dissipated a bit.
I'll always remember, I brought this up, and we're going to be joined now by Scott Drew, Baylor men's basketball coach. The 2 kick returns for touchdowns in the last game against West Virginia during that very difficult 2022 or 2023 season. We're now joined by national championship head coach Scott Drew. He joins us. They just wrapped up a practice, and I mean, it has been a grind for you, hasn't it? It has. I'm not going to pull any punches, but what a huge win on the road in Fort Worth. But how are you holding up as a program, as a team, and as you enter the last weekend of the regular season?
You're muted, Scott.
Oh, you're mute. Okay.
Well, see, I gave you a great answer, and you couldn't even hear it.
Okay, you can give it again.
Well, we're undefeated in March, so March is a good month. All right, I like March.
Hey, if you go undefeated in March, you're gonna win an Addy.
Yeah. So I can tell you the good thing is we've been, we played primarily 7 guys, and right before the Colorado game, we were healthy, had some practices, excited to see what could happen, and then none went out with that food bug in the morning, took us back to 6. But after that, Cincinnati, we played well, had a couple more good days of practice, feel like we're starting to really blend and know what to expect from everybody. And I know we J-Mo jokes the Magnificent 7, but also I know Marino and Jason have gotten some reps, and you feel good with where they're at. But I think the chemistry is good. I think we're starting to get better defensively, starting to find ways that we can pick on people offensively now that we kind of have a rotation and have some data on who plays well with who and what we need to do. So excited where we're at, excited to see where we can go the rest of the month.
How did it feel just coming back from Fort Worth, having won a couple games back to back? It'd been a little while.
Yeah, well, definitely coming off a win is always better than coming off a loss. When we lost 3 in a row, I didn't know. They said the last time we lost 4 in a row was 2007, 2008. So
wow.
Yeah, we don't want to go back to those days.
No.
But again, great bounce back by our guys, and really the bottom line is our margin of error is thin. So that means you're gonna win close or lose close, and so you got to be ready to handle the roller coaster. And with us, tough thing is just having enough guys healthy long enough where we can get some rotations and have guys feel comfortable playing with each other. And I thought the last couple games, you look at it, they've all been close, but we've done a lot of good things.
Langston went out for a little bit. No, everything good with him for tomorrow night and going forward?
I hope so. He came back, played well, and today we didn't do much, but he was a part of it. And it was great that he came back second half, and he didn't score it like he's capable, but really provided us great defense and continuity on offense. See, one thing with Langston being in the program for 4 years, he doesn't make many mistakes, and defensively, our zone was really working, and he's had more time in it than anybody else. So he's really solid in those type of things. Like you can play multiple positions. He knows what to do, when to do it.
With who you had coming back and who you added, Jeremy Roach, Omier, and others, but did you expect, besides the obvious yes, to shoot the 3% much better? Has that just been something that just hasn't clicked?
Yeah, good question. I think let's go to this. The first 17 years we had one ACL injury. In the last 4, we've had 4, and or maybe it's the first 18. It's 1, and then the last. So you've had Lang, you've had Jonathan, you've had Giannis, and now you've had Josh. And I think with the 3-point percentage, some of that is just you look at Roach in and out, 2 concussions. We've never had anybody with 2 concussions before. Langston just joining late, basically. And everyone else probably playing more minutes than they've expected to play. And some games you make shots, some games you don't make shots. And the more weapons or different people you can play to pick up on nights where they're not shooting well, really helps your offense. So the reason I'm getting to all that with your question, I think if we had a deeper bench, nights that guys are shooting well, they would play more minutes, and that would help.
Yep.
Rather than everybody having to play extended minutes, and normally fatigue makes cowards of us all. But anyway, if you get tired, normally you don't shoot it as well, you know?
No question. You are about to start this run tomorrow night or Saturday night, a late game with Houston. And then you hope, however you play, many games you play, and hopefully win in Kansas City. Then it's Thursday, Friday, hopefully Saturday, Sunday. It's a grind. You've already been through a grind. Is it really just the same as what you're going through and what you're doing now? When you get to tournament play, there's even more of a grind.
Well, I think we're getting used to these late night games. We've had a couple of them. And
goodness.
I know. Normally late night games are great for students. Unfortunately, ours are going to be on the beaches. So hopefully we have enough stay that can give us that juice and energy Saturday at 9:00. And for all the people that are going to make it down, can't thank you enough. We haven't lost a game on Saturday in the Foster, so we need to keep that going this year. And Houston hadn't lost a road game, so something's got to give. As far as tournament play, NCAA tournament play is a little different than Big 12 play. Big 12 play, playing every day, is more taxing and obviously helps to have more depth. The NCAA tournament, more similar to a Saturday, Monday game, and that day of rest really allows you to have two fresher games or your legs under you, which is different than the Big 12, which is game after game after game, and it does benefit to have a deeper rotation.
Scott, I know you've been very effusive in your praise for Kelvin Sampson, that Houston program, and they've come in and they've carried their weight as we all hoped they would do in basketball. You want to make them 18-2 coming up, but can you speak to just how incredible and exceptionally difficult it is to be in a spot where they're 18-1 in a conference like the Big 12?
Yeah, I think what they've done is remarkable, and I think Coach Sampson obviously has gotten a lot of recognition for what a great job he's done there, and all deservedly so. What I like about Coach Sampson is I've had a great relationship with him dating back to when he came from Oklahoma, and always respected him, learned a lot from him. And again, he's done nothing but make the Big 12 better and stronger. Them winning back-to-back titles. The only programs to do that, Kansas, us, and Houston now. So again, you get better playing against the best. We always learn something about our team and can improve after competing against them.
How do you compare what they do defensively to that national championship team you had that was such a just started squeezing people as the game progressed?
Well, I think the first thing is we had 3 people nominated for Naismith Defenders of the Year. You had Davion, who won it, Mark Vidal, top 5, and Jared Butler, top 15. And you look at them, they have 3 in the, I believe, in the top 15, top 20 in one of the defensive analytic breakdown polls that I saw. So they got really talented players, and Coach Sampson puts them in positions to be successful. And how they get more field goal attempts is they turn over people more. And then on the offensive rebounding, they've always been tremendous under Coach Sampson. And that's something that we did really well the year that we won it as well. And traditionally, we're usually a top 3, top 5 offensive rebounding team. This year we're good, but we're not where we were. And unfortunately, we never got to see it with Josh and everybody together. But for us, first and foremost, you can't turn it over, can't have live ball turnovers, because they're good enough when you're able to set your defense. You don't need to give them easies. But they really thrive on creating turnovers and doubling the post or putting 2 on the ball with ball screens. And then from there, offensively, Coach Sampson's really done a great job being able to keep talented players. I mean, you look at the guys in their system. I mean, Roberts 6 years, Sharp, redshirt junior, but he's been in there multiple years. LJ, multiple years. Tugler, multiple years. You just go up and down their roster, and Muzan they've done a great job with Milos. In helping him go to another level. Porter's a great coach and put the foundation, and then Kelvin, what he's done with them this year. But the bulk of their team are talented players that have been in there for a long time, and we all know that that's a big advantage nowadays with so much turnover.
Scott, you mentioned depth, and in this day and age with NIL and constructing depth, transfer portal. Have you thought about how you should construct it moving forward? Have you changed your mind on it, or is it still pretty much the same recipe?
No, I think everybody prefers to have more depth than less depth, and I think going forward we'll always try to be deeper than we've been from the standpoint. 4 straight years with a season-ending injury. You might as well start planning on it, But 1 in 18, you feel like, maybe you'll have someone out for a couple of weeks, but not 4 season-ending injuries, And I mean, even LJ wasn't an ACL, but his was basically a season-ending injury as well. His year, so we just gotta plan on that nowadays.
Your thoughts about LJ? He's on a streak, and obviously the love if he had when he was a part of a national championship team, but then he moved to Houston where he's from. But playing him, reading against him, and just that relationship with him. I know you wish he was still playing for you, though.
Yeah. No, I think what you can say is LJ's won 4 conference championships, 2 here, 2 at Houston. How many people do that? So that means he deserves a lot of credit because he's bringing something to the table. He's a tremendous player. And he's someone that's gotten better each and every year, like good players do. But a big reason of that is he spends time in the gym and on his craft. And he's somebody that obviously I liked him when he was wearing green and gold better than when he was wearing Houston.
I know you got to go, but you're in, right? That win, you are probably in anyway when it comes to bracketology and all that. But that win at TCU, get to 10 wins, you're going to have 500 or better in the conference. Are you locked in the tournament? And do you think that what that means as far as where you might be seated?
Well, I think if I was in charge of the tournament, we're definitely in. Unfortunately, I'm not. I don't get to hand out the invite. So 10-10. If you lose to Houston with strength of schedule at 4 or whatever we are, and then Arkansas and St. John's give you non-conference quality wins. The losses in the non-conference, Gonzaga, UConn. Who else do we lose to? Tennessee. Those are all tournaments.
Big boy schools. Yeah. They're doing, yeah.
Seed. So I would think we're in as far as where we're seated. That depends what we do against Houston, what we do against the Big 12 tournament. And the great thing is, as long as we're playing, we get to control our own destiny as far as where we end up with things. So the great thing about the Big 12 is you play games like Houston, and it's not a bad loss. And if you win, you get the benefit of beating a quality team. So I know one thing, we're excited how we're playing. We're excited how we're coming together. I think the team's really united and ready to put our best foot forward. And a lot of times, last couple of years coming down the stretch, we were all beat up and banged up. I think this year we're ready to be healthy and play our best.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jaden Nunn gets sick, throws up, basically walking into your chapel. Then you have people healthy, and then Josh goes down. It has been one of those where, like, everywhere you turn, it's like getting like the Oklahoma drill in football. Somebody's coming at you. And I know it's been tough, but good luck. If you play at 9, when is the clock being changed? Is that game is this the time change coming up this weekend, or is that later in the month of March? I don't know. I was wondering if you play and the game is over, it might be like 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, it is this Sunday. Do we lose an hour, gain an hour?
I don't. I get
we go back an hour.
Spring forward, yeah.
What did you say, Craig?
Go back an hour.
Go back an hour. Okay, good.
Go back an hour. Okay.
Yeah, we're
well,
good.
whatever it is, I'm gonna tell you, 9 o'clock.
Wait.
We need you in the Foster. All right,
I'm
9
wrong. It goes
o'clock. We
forward,
need you in the
yeah.
Foster. Yeah,
actually, it's forward.
Forward, yeah.
so-
Forward,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, you knew. We need to see you at the pavilion, at the Foster Pavilion. Scott, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. We'll see you Saturday.
Hey, just remember, time flies at the Foster.
That's exactly right. There you go. There you go. That's Scott Drew. They play Houston Saturday night at the Foster Pavilion. Appreciate his time. And then the Big 12 tournament, of course, starts next week in Kansas City. The women going on, in fact, right now. When we come back, Paul Catalina and the top 5 on this Thursday evening. It is evening in some places. Hope you've had a great day. Appreciate your time. We're back in a moment.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric and personalize your cover, and leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5. Yesterday we did free agency fits at wide receiver. Let's talk about quarterback. The most boring position in free agency, because most teams, if you have to sign a free agent quarterback, it usually doesn't work out for you. But sometimes it does. Let's go through the list of guys. Let's start with my guy, Jameis Winston. The Jets draft 7th. Highly unlikely that one of the top tier guys is going to fall to them. They drafted Jordan Travis in the 4th round last year. Still a long-term project, and he didn't play last year. As a matter of fact, his agent complained about the way the Jets attacked his rehab and rushed him back, so he wasn't able to compete in the season last year. Still a long-term project, but he's there for you as well. They're prepared to go in with Tyrod Taylor as their starter, but I think when you have Garrett Wilson, you've got some young wide receivers, and you'll add some other things. I think Jameis Winston, for a 1 or 2 year fit with the Jets as a bridge starter, is an upgrade over Tyrod. Garrett Wilson is there. He's an elite wide receiver. Yeah, it could be an adventure, but you're still a year away from probably drafting the replacement at quarterback, or if you draft one this year, he's just going to be in the room with Jordan Travis, figuring out how to be the long-term Jets answer at quarterback. Next up, number 4, Justin Fields to the Raiders. Another short-term fix. Now, Shadur Sanders does get to the Raiders. He automatically becomes the backup, but a viable one at that. You've got Chip Kelly, who's going to run a ton of RPOs. That's what he can do. So if you're going to run RPOs and you need an easy entrance into that offense in year one, when you're looking at a total rebuild for Pete Carroll and the Raiders, you can do a lot worse than Justin Fields. And remember, Pete Carroll was part of the renaissance of Geno Smith's career before he left the Seahawks. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson have a history, but we'll talk about Russ here in just 1 second. But I think Justin Fields in that Raiders offense for a year. Again, they don't have any weapons outside of Brock Bowers. They've got, it's a total rebuild in Las Vegas. I think for a year, running some RPOs, getting a playmaker, a guy who's a fine backup to have and a bridge quarterback, Justin Fields would be my guy for the Raiders for this year. Number 3, Russell Wilson. Go back to the Steelers. Worked out really well. Everything kind of clicked for you. Get him some weapons, see how he can do. You're not drafting high enough to get a quarterback that's going to make a difference this year. Get Russell Wilson for a couple years and then start the long-term planning at quarterback. I think that's the best thing, although if he went and reunited with Pete Carroll, if they can be friends again, if he'll decide to let Russ cook, I don't know, in Vegas, maybe that could be a thing. I just don't think that at Russ's
point in his career, he wants to be a part of a rebuild. As for the Steelers, a pretty good team. They've got a couple holes, but all in all, pretty good. Number 2, Sam Darnold. I thought about this a lot. Should he go to the Titans? Should he go to the Raiders? Should he, go somewhere else and try to be the starter? I think a short-term deal with the Vikings is probably best for both sides. Even though they did draft J.J. McCarthy, if you can get out of a deal after a couple years and make J.J. the full-time starter, or just have a competition this year and see if you can recapture that Sam Darnold magic he had last year before the end of the season with the weapons that you have and a very good coach in Kevin O'Connell, I would do that. I would keep Sam Darnold and see what you can do just here in the short term. You're not going to build a dynasty around Sam Darnold, but you could maybe kick one off if you make the right decisions after that. He is in his best moment of his career right now. No reason to kick that on down the road if you know that it can work. And number 1, Aaron Rodgers should go to a cave. He needs to retire. He's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. He doesn't love it as much as he used to. He's fooling himself if he thinks that he is. And he's more trouble than he's worth. I'm going to do a public service announcement for the New York Giants, Tennessee Titans, and any team considering signing Aaron Rodgers right now. And for Aaron Rodgers, it's not worth the headache for all of you. Don't do it. It's over. And it's okay, Aaron, to be done. It's okay. You're going to the Hall of Fame. You're one of the most elite passers of all time, and you're the most ridiculous quarterbacks I've ever seen, and anyone has ever seen. It's okay to rest on that. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. Now you can go jump into this dark cave and leave us all alone. That's going to do it for this Top 5. I'm Paul Catalina. David Smoak will send us away right now.
Like you want to send away Aaron Rodgers, and I do think it would be great. The injury, the Achilles, and the Jets didn't work out, but maybe somebody gives him one more shot. He threw the prettiest ball for the longest of times. All right, for Craig Smoak, thank you, Craig, very much. All of our great sponsors, 365 Sports. And, of course, Emery Winter is right now editing, dialing up 365 Sports tonight. Runs 10:30 tonight on the local CW. Andrew, back from a little bit of a snippet of on the injury list with a cold or flu. Not flu. He wouldn't be here if it was the flu. Garrett Ross, thank you very much. Still waiting on that cookie cake that you didn't bring back to me. Thank you, all of you, whether you are watching or listening to us on 365 Sports YT, YouTube, 365 Sports, Twitter, of course, the one I mentioned as well. Hope you've had a great day. Thank you for being a part of what we do. Back tomorrow at 3. This is 365 Sports, and good night.